The command has been given. The engines are started. There is an aerial view of Darlington International Raceway, and you can see very clearly that this is not an exactly shaped oval. It's more egg-shaped, Jack.
Well, Bob, that's what the drivers refer to it. As you look to the upper left of your screen, that's actually turns 1 and 2, and then over in the bottom side is 3 and 4. They're beginning to pull away, so we better get to row assignments right now. 40
cars ready to go, and here is the starting lineup for the TranSouth 500 on the pole with a new track record of 159.197 from Chemung, New York in the Levi Garrett Chevrolet. Jeff Bodine alongside in car number 25, Tim Richmond in the Folgers Coffee Chevrolet. Second row, Benny Parsons, car 55, the Copenhagen Oldsmobile, and Dale Earnhardt in number 3, Wrangler Jean Chevrolet. The third row, number 12, Budweiser Chevrolet with Neil Bonnet. Outside, Joe Ruttman in 26, the Quaker State Buick. In row number 4, Sterling Marlin in the Bullseye Barbecue Sauce Chevy car number 1, and Ricky Rudd in the Motorcraft Ford car 15. In the fifth row will be Harry Gant in the Skull Bandit Chevrolet number 33, and Darrell Waltrip in the number 11 Budweiser Chevrolet. In the sixth row, car 44, the Piedmont Airlines Chevrolet with Terry Labonte, and outside will be Bobby Allison in the number 22 Miller American Buick. The seventh row, Rusty Wallace, last week's winner in the Al Ugard Pontiac car 27, and Buddy Baker in the number 88 Crisco Oldsmobile. Then in row number 8, Morgan Shepherd in car 47, the Raceville Farms Buick, and Richard Petty in the familiar number 43 STP Pontiac. The ninth row, Jody Ridley in number 75, the Nationwide Auto Parts Pontiac, and Bobby Dillon in the Middle American Buick, car number 8. In row number 10 will be Mike Waltrip in car number 23, and Phil Parsons in 66. The 11th row for today's race will have Bill Elliott in car number 9 and Ken Schrader in number 90. The 12th row, car 28, Cale Yarborough, and 98, Ron Bouchard. In the 13th row, Rick Wilson in car number 4 and Davey Allison in car number 95. Those make up row number 13, Rick Wilson and Davey Allison. Then in the 14th row will be Kyle Petty in number 7 and H.B. Bailey in 36. After that, in row number 15, Alan Kulwicki in 35 and Trevor Boys in number 6. The 16th row has Jimmy Means in 52 and Tommy Ellis in 18. The 17th row, Eddie Bierschwald in 94 and Ronnie Thomas in 48. The 18th row, Dave Marcus in 71 and Doug Hebron in 17. In row number 19, Connie Saylor in 64 and J.D. McDuffie in number 70. And in the 20th and final row, Bobby Waywack in 74 and Mark Stahl in car number 82. There is the front row, Jeff Bodine and Tim Richmond, and they are down the backstretch, and we should be going green next time around.
And this is a tricky place for taking the green flag. You've got to be careful to get yourself into single file position by the time you dive into turn 1. So the outside row really looks for a spot being held by the inside row when they drop the green flag. So it gets very tricky when they come out of 4 and look at Harold Kinder's green flag.
Well, you just can't pick a winner in this race. There are upwards of 20 or 25 cars and drivers very capable of winning this race. We are in Buddy Baker's car number 88, sponsored by Crisco, and we hope to have excellent shots from the interior of this car throughout the TranSouth 500 this afternoon. There is Buddy, who's lined up in 14th starting position. Alongside him, Rusty Wallace, the winner of last week's Bristol race. Here comes the field off of corner number 4. Harold Kinder waves the green flag, and we are racing at Darlington. Jeff Bodine gets a terrible start.
He's in trouble, Bob.
He is dropping back on the field. Benny Parsons and several others are trapped behind him. Meanwhile,
2 cars in the wall, 2 on the high side in turn 2.
One of them is Ron Bouchard, involved in a skirmish up there. The other one is the number 95 car of Davey Allison. Not serious wall contact, but there was some scraping of the wall, and you can see that Davey Allison's machine has been damaged, and the bodywork pushed against the right front tire, the left front, I should say. They race back to the yellow flag, and Tim Richmond edges out Dale Earnhardt for the lead, but just by a scant car length.
I'm going to lead and speculate, Bob, that possibly the problem that befell Jeff Bodine, as we look at Davey Allison limping onto pit road, could have set off a chain reaction that resulted in the crash by Davey. Because as we said before, they have to come into that first turn and find a line, single file. So we'll take a look at the restart of this race and see if we can see where it telegraphs itself back to Davey Allison.
Well, you'll remember that last week, Jeff Bodine also had a tough time at the beginning of the race.
Now, watch the number 7 car, and let's see what happens there with Kyle Petty. See if we can see where he goes. He's further down back. There he dives to the inside, looking to get out of the way as the field on the inside is slowing down because they're all behind Bodine. That's telegraphing itself back, car by car by car, almost like you're on an interstate and you pull up to an accident where everybody stopped. You just begin to deck them up.
Well, here's Jeff Bodine pulling into the pit area, and also behind him comes Kyle Petty. Now the Levi Garrett crew, headed by Gary Nelson, is running to the Jeff Bodine car to push it into his pit area. Let's get down to Dick Berggren.
Well, here comes Bodine in his pit. His crew is pushing him. At this point, they don't know what's wrong with the car, but it seems as if the engine has conked out on it at the moment. Gary Nelson now in. That's what they're doing. They're working on the electrical system of the car. Nelson changing over to the spare electrical system. Each of these cars has 2 electric systems in it. He is now moving to the backup system. It tried to fire. It just backfired up through the carburetor. Bodine in serious trouble. They've moved the timing light in here now. This is definitely not the way to start the race.
And Dick, remember yesterday in the late model sportsman race, they had a problem with the number 15 car from the Rick Hendrick stable, and it was electrical as well.
Well, let's go to Benny Parsons. We have a radio in Benny's car, and we'll see how this problem with Jeff Bodine affected him. Benny, this is Bob up in the booth. You were kind of trapped there behind Jeff Bodine, who had a problem with the start.
Bob, I didn't know what to do. I hated to pull out because the fellows on the outside were going so fast. I felt like if I pulled up in front of someone, they might hit me.
Well, Jeff is in the pits right now, and it looks like it could be a serious problem for him. Now, what do you do, having lost several positions here on the first lap?
Well, yeah, I don't really know what to do right now. Just trying to run as best I can and follow. There's some good guys in front of me. Just trying to follow these people. If I can't pass them, go ahead and do it.
Is the car running okay at this point?
Seem to be fine that one lap.
All right, Benny, we'll continue to be with you throughout the afternoon. Let's go down to Dick once again for this further update on Jeff Bodine.
Well, Bob, they've just put a new distributor in Bodine's car, apparently going back to the old electrical system. The backup electrical system didn't do it, so the new distributor went in. Incidentally, in the last practice session yesterday afternoon, they had to change the electrical system in Tim Richmond's car when it failed as well. So here's the 2 top cars. Both have had electrical problems within the last 24 hours.
Kyle Petty, by the way, has been placed at the rear of the field for jumping the start. Here we go again. The screen comes out on lap number 4, and the TranSouth 500 is underway once again. Jeff Bodine remains in the pit area while his teammate Tim Richmond leads the others through turn number 2 and now onto the backstretch. Dale Earnhardt is running second. Joe Ruttman is third, followed by Ricky Rudd, then Darrell Waltrip, and Bobby Allison, then Sterling Marlin.
These front 3 cars have looked to pull away just a little bit. Richmond, though, we're going to have to watch on him. He's got to be thinking, Bob, that's what's befallen on his teammate's car.
Richmond, Earnhardt, and Joe Ruttman have more or less separated themselves from the rest of the field. Now Joe Ruttman looking strong, watching inside of Earnhardt.
Whoa,
and
did you see
Earnhardt
that?
squirrely coming off the second corner.
Richmond is very, very loose. Earnhardt just took drastic action to try and avoid Richmond, but Richmond was very loose coming out of that corner.
And he drops back 2 positions and may lose another one here. Joe Ruttman in car number 26 has moved into second spot. The lead now goes to Dale Earnhardt, and we'll replay what happened over in turn number 2.
Now watch Richmond. Richmond's tail will begin to bobble, and then Earnhardt makes a choice to try to go to the inside. It almost sets off another accident.
So Earnhardt with the lead, and Joe Ruttman in second position. Joe with a second place finish this year at Richmond. But other than that, the car has just not held together for him. He's hoping for an excellent finish here this afternoon, and he's certainly one of those capable of making it number 12 different driver to visit victory lane. Richard Petty in car number 43, we understand, had a scrape of the wall. But Richard right now continuing to be at speed on the racetrack. He is in 12th position right now, and behind him is Harry Gant in car 33.
You cannot run Darlington International Raceway without getting into the wall at least once or twice, and anybody, including a king like Richard Petty, will be quick to tell you that. But this early, that would cause concern for how the car's handling.
And an interesting development as far as Richard Petty is concerned with his physical health. You recall he had an accident at Daytona in which he broke some ribs, and he has a special hookup in the cockpit today to more or less relax his neck.
Well, yeah, it's something out of what I would say a Rube Goldberg handbook for head restraints. But Dick Berggren can explain to us a little bit later about that.
So 18 laps have been completed now. We have 367 that will make up this 500-mile race at Darlington, and we'll be back for more after these messages. Back at Darlington International Raceway in the TranSouth 500, the cars that started on the front row have had their problems. Jeff Bodine is behind the wall at this point, and Tim Richmond is also experiencing some handling problems, Jack.
Now, watch the tail wag on Richmond's car. Well, actually, we're a little too far into it, and it already had happened. But Earnhardt did the best he could to get down to the inside. And while we were away, Dick Berggren reported that Harry Hyde told him that they had intentionally set the car up, Richmond's car, to be loose going in. It's just a little looser than they want it to be. And I'll tell you what, Bob, I have never heard of a crew chief setting a car up being loose going into a race at Darlington. Almost every driver will tell you they want a little bit of push in the car when they start the race.
Joe Ruttman trailing Dale Earnhardt. Here's the shot from out the rear window of Buddy Baker's car. That's Benny Parsons trailing him. Some excellent shots from the in-car camera. This is 7th and 8th. Buddy is in 7th position, and Benny is in 8th spot in the number 55 Copenhagen car.
And did you see the way Benny kept looking to the outside, pointing the nose over there, try to just check out and see if maybe he could get by Buddy, and then he thought better of it.
Let's go down to Dick Berggren in the pit area, who has Jeff Bodine. Dick?
Well, I'm with Jeff Bodine, the disappointed pole sitter. Jeff, a tough break.
The shortest day I think I've ever had in racing. It looks like we broke a camshaft. The distributor won't turn, the engine just quit running. Shifted into third gear and it just quit on the start. That's a tough break, but it's part of racing, Dick. I mean, these fellas work hard on these engines and do the best they can, and a camshaft braking is just a freak thing. We haven't seen any of that in a long while.
Can they fix that, Jeff?
No. They can fix it when they take the engine apart, but that's all. It's broke down inside the engine, so we're out for the day, but it's still been a heck of a year. We won Daytona, got a couple track records already, a lot of racing left. The Rick Hendrick team has got a lot to be proud of. Tim Richmond's still out there. Let's hope he has a good day.
That's Jeff Bodine. He sat on the pole. He is out of it already. First car to drop out.
You know, that's an interesting point, Bob. Whenever talked to Jeff Bodine since he won the Daytona 500, he says, my whole season has been made just by that one victory. I'm the Daytona 500 champion. You can see it in his attitude, even when he drops out of a race as early as he did here.
Last week was not particularly good for Jeff either. He finished 24th, and today will have to be listed, I believe, as the 40th finisher, last place. There's Dale Earnhardt. You know, the times that a driver turns in the final practice session is always important, and last evening Dale Earnhardt was the fastest in practice. That may be an indication of things to come here this afternoon.
Look how far back Tim Richmond has fallen. He's directly in front of Buddy Baker, our camera car, after starting on the outside pole, and if that doesn't mean that you've got your hands full, you're running back there in, what, 6th position? Let's see if we can see if the car begins to bobble at all as he comes through those corners. And on the backstretch, you see how they all try and line up single file, run as close to the wall as they can, and they hurtle down into that turn number 3 area. There you could see the car wag its tail as he went down through the corner. You know what Baker's thinking right now? How much room do I give him, because this guy could lose it at any moment.
And by the same token, Benny Parsons, who is right behind Buddy, probably thinking the same thing. We're watching 6th place Tim Richmond, our in-car camera in Buddy Baker's car. He's 7th, and behind Buddy is the number 55 car of Benny Parsons. We've completed 19 laps here in the TranSouth 500, and the lead continues to be held by Dale Earnhardt, with Joe Ruttman running in 2nd spot. There's the line going into the 3rd corner, and you notice how the car just dives down from the straightaway into the turn and kind of goes low on the groove.
He does, but he's really got his hands full, because when a car is loose, it'd be like you or I driving our car on ice or in a very rainy condition. The ends want to swap with each other, and you've got to turn that wheel, lock it down as hard as you can, and let it begin to slide, and then overcorrect and back it back up again. Now Baker says, I've had enough of this. I'm going to try to get around him. He runs out of space before he gets to turn 3, and he's got to watch the Folger's tail wag one more time.
Now they go into corner number 4. Tim Tim Richmond still holding on to that 6th spot with Buddy Baker right behind him. No change of position on this lap.
This, I'll tell you what, if you want to get a feel for what running Darlington is like, go turn the volume up on your TV right now as loud as you possibly can get it. Turn the heat up to about 90 degrees and sit in the smallest chair you've got and wrap yourself with a couple of ace bandages. You'll get a feel for what it's like to be out at Darlington and sit there for 4.5 hours and don't move.
Not exactly the most pleasant way to spend a Sunday afternoon, but that's how these guys do it. You can see they're lapping some slower traffic now, going high on the racetrack to pass the back markers. Now Buddy once again sticks his nose to the inside of Tim Richmond as they go down the backstretch.
You know, that restart has been costly for Benny Parsons. You know, he said he had no place to go, and he's mired back here in the second 5, let us say. And he was running so well in practice, and now you've got to be careful. You've got to pick your spot. You can't just go pass here like you could at Atlanta or Talladega or a place like that. This is a tricky racetrack. It looks wide, but there's only one groove all the way around.
It is a very wide racetrack, but you can see that most of the track is apron. The actual groove that they use here to run on is very, very small. Baker continuing to stalk Tim Richmond, and Benny Parsons is right behind Buddy Baker. Benny Parsons, who was with us in the broadcast booth yesterday, describing the action of the Grand National race here that was won by Darrell Waltrip, today in the cockpit of the Oldsmobile and currently running in 8th spot. The leader, Dale Earnhardt. Running second is Joe Ruttman, and third, Ricky Rudd. Back with more from Darlington, South Carolina. Bob Jenkins, Jack Arute, and Dick Berggren back at Darlington, South Carolina, where some Masters fans have gathered with us this afternoon. We'll keep an eye on the Masters Golf Tournament being held not too far away from here throughout the afternoon, and try to keep you abreast of what's going on there. From high above Darlington International Raceway, this view of what's going on, the green flag remains out, and Dale Earnhardt has opened up quite a lead over Joe Ruttman.
So what else is new? It seems like every race we've been to, and there's your leader as he's going over some lap traffic. Dale Earnhardt has led and almost dominated somewhere along the line, but you know what, Bob? He's yet to win a race this year.
He has finished second at Atlanta. He was 8th at Rockingham and 3rd at Richmond, but has not visited victory lane so far this year. As we were telling you, Ricky Rudd in the Ford is running in 3rd spot, then Darrell Waltrip is 4th, and Bobby Allison is 5th. Back in 6th, 7th, and 8th spot, Tim Richmond in the Vulture's car, then Buddy Baker, whom we are riding with, and then Benny Parsons running 8th. Buddy Baker in that car number 88 Crisco sponsored machine. Buddy not full-time on the Winston Cup trail anymore, and we asked him how he felt about that.
Buddy, do you miss being a full-time driver on the Winston Cup circuit?
Not really. I ran all the races last year, and right now we're getting our operation where we're competing in all the major speedway races, and I think we're gaining leaps and bounds right now over trying to just be there. We're trying to build winners now.
Benny still running 7th, but a change back of him moving into 8th position is the number 33 Skull Bandit of Harry Gant. Benny Parsons drops back to 9th position.
See how the leader's beginning to work the race traffic. He's got to be very careful when we talk about a one-groove racetrack. You got by, you can only literally pass on the straightaways here. There's Darrell Waltrip and Bobby Allison. They're mired in a contest back there in the Battle of the Beers.
4th place is Waltrip, and 5th is Bobby Allison in the number 22 Miller American.
You really have to pick your spots here to pass, and that's where race traffic becomes so critical, Bob. You saw with Buddy Baker when he was beginning to work around Tim Richmond, he had no place to go.
Well, if you look real closely, you can see that there might be a crack in the windshield on Bobby Allison's car, and that's a problem that plagued Tommy Houston yesterday in the Grand National event.
And it's right in his field of vision. It looks like he must have dinged it somehow, because it looks definitely like a crack on a stone or maybe a lug nut if come up and hit him right in the windshield.
Darrell Waltrip won yesterday's Grand National race here at Darlington International Raceway in the division that used to be called Late Model Sportsman. And he really earned the victory, too, because he raced with and passed Dale Earnhardt in the late stages of the race, and Darrell went on to register a victory.
Here we're talking about race traffic. So see, the race traffic lap car went down way low on the inside of the racetrack to let Allison and Waldron go by, allowing them not to get out of the throttle and be able to get set up properly to go into turn one.
Drafting here isn't as much of a factor as it is on some of the faster racetracks, as we will see at Talladega, for instance, in the first weekend of May when we visit there. But you do pick up a bit of a draft here at Darlington.
Oh, yes, you do. And while it may be marginal as compared to a Daytona or Talladega, you can use it, and you should use it to your advantage, especially when you're trying to chase down the lead car that begins to pull away on you. You can use it by getting behind those lap cars and trying to catch some air. There's Dale Earnhardt looking to the inside of, it looked like the Friedlander car of Tommy Ellis, puts him a lap down. So there are 23 cars left on the lead lap. This is a torrid pace by Earnhardt so far, Bob.
It certainly is. He has just pulled away from the rest of the field. He's opened up about a full straightaway advantage over second place Joe Ruttman. And these guys are continuing to run in order, although Harry Gant has moved up to sixth place now, ahead of Tim Richmond and also ahead of Buddy Baker.
Now let's see how bad Richmond's car is. Has it gotten any worse than the last time we checked in from Buddy Baker's vantage point? Baker looks to the inside. He's alongside of him coming out of turn number 2. Down the backstretch, let's see if he can make the pass. Now he's got to get himself positioned. He does, ready to go back up. And Benny Parsons passed with him, got by Richmond, so they dropped Richmond back by 2 places. Before they get to the turn, they've got to get back to that high side. And they both did it.
Obviously, Tim is still having problems with the handling of that car because he is dropping back on the field. Neil Bonnet is now running right behind Tim Richmond, and Tim drops back to 9th. Neil Bonnet is in 10th position.
I'll tell you, I would really have to question the decision to set that car up, Richmond's car, with any degree of looseness going into this event, because it's obvious that while he was fast in qualifying, he's being very fast to the back of the pack here during the race.
We talked about a possible crack in Bobby Allison's windshield. Dick Berggren, can you update us from the pit area?
Yeah, I sure can, Bob. That's not a possible crack, it's a real-life crack. But it happened early in the race. A piece of debris came back and took a chunk out of it. The crew says they're really not worried about it because the crack isn't propagating. Now, you can run out here with a cracked windshield, and that's just what Bobby Allison intends to do.
At the same time, though, in yesterday's Grand National race, there's a tremendous amount of air that comes back onto the windshield and could very possibly make that crack larger as the afternoon wears on.
Well, there was a little bit of a difference between Allison's crack and Houston's crack. Remember when we reported it, Houston's crack was actually a hole. A piece penetrated the windshield, and with that hole, we had the problem that it began to, as he said, penetrate and propagate all over the windshield. With Bobby's, as long as they don't get a minor hole in it that'll cause the air to suck inside the cockpit, he should be able to go the distance without any problem.
For those of you wondering, the guy who won both races here at Darlington last year, Bill Elliott, in the number 9 Coors Ford, is running in 20th position. The leader, Dale Earnhardt, and we will be right back. The TranSouth 500 underway from Darlington International Raceway. Here's what's happened so far. Jeff Bodine, the pole sitter, had a problem right at the drop of the green flag, is already out of the race. The leader is Dale Earnhardt. Second place belongs to Joe Ruttman, and this man, Ricky Rudd, is running third in a Ford. Now, as we indicated earlier in the program, his is really the only Ford that has shown any speed here this weekend.
And he showed some strength last week at Bristol, and you know, both times they had a problem. Whoa, we've got a problem. It's Bobby Hill and his spun in the middle of turns 3 and 4. Everybody's streaking by. You can see the skid marks coming down onto the apron for young Bobby Hill in the Stabola entry.
It is resting on the apron of the racetrack. So the yellow comes out for the second time this afternoon. Here is Cale Yarborough in car number 28, who started this race down in the 23rd position, qualifying about 6 miles an hour off the pole setting speed.
And he was none too happy. And when we alluded to the air dams on the front of those cars on the Fords, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But he's part of that story along with Rudd. What I was going to say about Ricky Rudd is Bud Moore again is not here today.
He is suffering from viral hepatitis and has missed the last two Winston Cup races, and we certainly hope he'll be back very, very shortly. Dick Berggren in the pit area.
And Dick Berggren is in the pit area. The leader, Dale Earnhardt. They're going to take on at least outside tires, take on a load of fuel. This is a perfectly routine pit stop here. Since it's under the yellow flag, there's no tremendous rush. He would like to beat some of his competitors out. It's going to be a 4-tire change. They've got the right side changed now. Going to do the inside. Most everybody up and down pit road has adopted the same strategy. 4-tire changes are legal this year. Everybody is going to take advantage of it wherever possible, and there goes Earnhardt.
Just before the yellow came out, Dale Earnhardt had lapped Bill Elliott and Richard Petty.
Let's take a look at Buddy Baker. Now Baker's right there waiting for his crew to get done. They've changed the tires. Benny's away. You see Ricky Rudd pulled away. Look at the windshield, Bob, on that car. Now he's just come in for service, and you can see how streaked it is anyways. They've dropped the jack. Now let's see how quick he comes up through the gearbox here. He's going down the straightaway, pulled into second, and there's Cale Yarborough, and he's on the back stretch, and good. Bobby Hillin is out of the car.
Bobby has run into a problem for the second week in a row. You'll recall last week he was involved in a nasty 3-car accident at Bristol International Raceway in which he got his bell rung pretty good, and he spins out of today's race also here at Darlington. We've talked about the rule changes and how they're affecting the cars. Let's get more on that now to going to Jackaroo.
Last year, many people said that the Fords had the unfair advantage, but what a difference a year makes. Now, there's been 3 new rules changes in just the last couple of weeks. The first one, well, all the cars are allowed to go back to 1984 size throttle bores. So that's helped the Fords and the General Motors products. The second rule is all cars now use the same size spoiler. So again, that's a toss-up. But here is the third rule, and here's the rub. Look at this window on the Chevrolets for 1986. See how acute and slanting it is? Well, let's compare that to the Ford Thunderbird over here behind me of Ricky Rudd's. When you take a look at its rear window, you notice that it's an awful lot like last year. In fact, it is the same. It doesn't have as acute an angle, so the air doesn't flow as quickly and hard over it. Therefore, not as much downforce. Now here's where the third NASCAR rule comes into play, and maybe why the Fords are not as competitive as they'd like to be here at Darlington. The use of these front air dams is now allowed on all makes of cars. It doesn't seem to hurt the Chevrolet too much because the front air dam creates so much downforce, but it seems to hurt the Fords. Why? Well, they don't have as much downforce created by the back window. Remember the window on the Chevrolet? It really stuck the rear end of the car to the ground. So it was commensurate with the front. Here in the Fords, when the drivers take the car into the corner, the nose really grips the ground, lifts the rear end off the racetrack, and they report that the car is very loose. That could be the reason why most of the Ford products failed to qualify in the top 20. The only one that did, Ricky Rudd. He starts 7th. Bob, let me update you on that, too. This car, Cale Yarborough, has elected to go and start this race without that front air dam. They've gone to the 85 nose, and let's check in with Cale and see what he thinks. Cale, how is that new nose, the 85 nose, working on the car? Is it any better than what you had when you first came here?
Well, the car's not handling like I'd like for it to, Jackie. I think it's working a little bit better than the air dam we had on the car when we came, but we still got a long ways to go. We're going to have to work with it every pit stop.
Knowing that you've got to work and adjust on the car in every pit stop, are you hoping for a number of cautions?
Well, yeah, I need a lot of cautions today because I'm going to need a lot of adjustments.
Well, good luck to you, and we'll stay on top of all the adjustments on that Hardee's machine.
Right now, Cale Yarborough runs in 11th position. Here's how they're running. Dale Earnhardt is back in the lead. For a moment there, Dave Marcus was, but now Earnhardt goes back into the top spot. Ricky Rudd second, Joe Ruttman is third, then Darrell Waltrip, followed by Bobby Allison and Harry Gant. Back with more from the TranSouth 500 at Darlington after these messages.
Well, when competitors come in and change tires, not only are they putting fresh rubber on, but they're also adjusting the suspension. And today we're going to follow with Andy Petrie, who is the suspension rubber expert for Benny Parsons, exactly what they do when they come in and make these pit stops. What, Andy, did you do on this pit stop to Benny's car, and how can we expect to see it run now?
Well, Benny said the car was loose in its last round of green flag, and we put a 5/8 stagger set of tires on from 1 inch, and that should tighten the car up.
What that basically means is that the left rear tire's difference in circumferential size when compared to the right is less. The left and right rear tires are about the same size. Benny's going to be able to tell them what's going to happen very shortly when the green flag drops. They hope they've gone in the right direction, and they hope they get rid of the car being loose.
So changes being made on the Benny Parsons car to hopefully get it handling better. There's Benny as the field moves down the backstretch now. The field still under caution because of the incident involving Bobby Hillen, who is okay. The car has been taken off of the racetrack, and we should be going green now within a few laps. We have 17 cars on the lead lap. However, a couple of cars who have been lapped include Bill Elliott and Richard Petty.
And it looks, Bob, like they're getting start, going 1 to go, so we'll be getting a start very shortly. And what an unusual scene to see Dale Earnhardt on the outside where the fastest cars are, and see a guy like Bill Elliott on the inside already a lap down.
There are the Winston Cup point standings going into this event. Darrell Waltrip in the lead with 825, followed by Terry Labonte, then Dale Earnhardt, Rusty Wallace, and Bill Elliott. And the second 5 include Jeff Bodine, Kyle Petty, Harry Gant, Tim Richmond, and Richard Petty.
And everybody better watch out for Waltrip. If he begins to score that many points this early in the season, it could be another Winston Cup championship for that team out of Engle Hollow.
And Dale has certainly changed his philosophy about racing. He says now it's more beneficial as far as winning the Winston Cup is concerned to be consistent rather than actually going for the win of a particular event.
Ironic front row, isn't it? A lap down Bill Elliott. What a difference a year makes.
We are ready to go green once again. The pace car is off the track, and Earnhardt picks up the pace. Now, both Elliott and Petty will attempt to get ahead of Earnhardt, and then if the yellow comes out again, they can make up the lap. But boy, Dale just blasts away from the rest of the field as the field goes into turn number 1.
One more time, they take that single file line down through as they hurtle down the backstretch. It's still Earnhardt beginning to pull away now by about 6-7 car lengths as he goes into turn 4.
And Elliott has fallen into third place there in line, but remember, he is a lap down. The Ford of Ricky Rudd seems to be working very well at this point, as Ricky is in second position now and not letting Dale get all that far ahead.
It's still early in the race. You've got to let things shake down. I think Ricky Rudd is driving a very, very good race. One would have to question Dale Earnhardt's strategy just because of past experience over the last 5 events where he's run strong early and then wasn't around or wasn't in contention for the win except one time by the time they got ready to drop the white and the checkered flags.
I want to update you on Bobby Hillen. He is fine, no problems whatsoever after that incident up in turn number 3 just a few laps ago. But Bobby Hillen is out of today's TranSouth 500.
At the tail end of this picture, you'll see a green car. Now that's Joe Ruttman, the Quaker State Special. Ruttman running in third, and that's a strong run for Joe. You know, he is yet to win a Winston Cup victory. He's been flushed with a little bit more hope after the win by Rusty Wallace last week.
And of course, this car is owned by Kenny Bernstein, one of the nation's very, very best drag racers. Kenny deciding to become involved in ownership in Winston Cup competition. And believe me, Kenny is putting a lot of money and a lot of time into making Joe Ruttman's ride successful for him.
Do you know how Kenny Bernstein got involved? He went to Daytona Beach, Florida a couple of years ago, and he talked Dick Bear into letting him take a stock car around and just try it in practice when they were getting ready for the Daytona 500. Kenny scared himself so bad, he said, I think I'm going to become a car owner instead of a driver on the Winston Cup Brigade.
Well, I'm not so sure that I would want to go as fast as a drag racer goes in a quarter of a mile. That in itself is a little dangerous, I would think.
You mean those squirt racers?
There is Earnhardt, the leader of the race, now with about a 5, 6, maybe 7 car length advantage on Ricky Rudd. There is Rudd in second in the Motorcraft Ford. Meanwhile, we go back in the pack and pick up on some action.
It's Morgan Shepherd's
Morgan
car.
Shepherd, yeah, who's running in 14th. Right ahead of him is Rusty Wallace, last week's winner, and Jody Ridley also involved. This is 12th, 13th, and 14th position.
There's a good example. Now there's Cale ducking to the inside, trying to get around the Friedlander car with Tommy Ellis on board. Wow, that was a close one. Very, very close.
Forced high on the racetrack, and Jody Ridley also passing him. Now, that is 11th position. Cale Yarborough in 11th.
And in cases of Darlington etiquette for our viewers, that was a pass that was done by Cale Yarborough. And actually, if you had to place the blame on someone there, and there goes Wallace to go around him, you would have had to place the blame on Tommy Ellis. He should have given way because Yarborough was up above. Now, look at 3 cars. That's our camera car in the back there. That's Buddy Baker, still glued to the rear bumper of Tim Richmond, trying to work that race traffic. There's the Captain Cody's car of Rick Wilson.
And Morgan Shepherd passing Tommy Ellis. They go down the backstretch in single file formation now.
You're seeing Shepherd at the head of the pack, Ellis looking to the inside. There is Richmond. Directly behind Richmond is the Captain Cody's car, we said, of Rick Wilson, and behind him is Buddy Baker.
Morgan Shepherd, who won the Atlanta Winston Cup race earlier this year in this car. Last week he did not run in this car. So this is his first time out in it since he did win the Winston Cup event. And right now he's running back in 14th position. There is Tommy Ellis in the number 18 Friedlander car. Down the straightaway once again with 60 laps now being completed. There is one of this year's winners, Terry Labonte in the Piedmont Airlines Oldsmobile. And behind him is Rick Wilson, a driver from Bartow, Florida, who is doing double duty here this weekend and finished in the top 5 in yesterday's Grand National race. Rick Wilson in car number 4.
You know, one of the tutors of Rick Wilson in the early days was a guy by the name of A.J. Foyt. Wilson was involved with Dick Hutchison, who also was involved quite heavily on the stock car side with Foyt, and used to come to a lot of races as Foyt's sidekick. Eventually, he landed that ride with Morgan McClure. It was vacated by Joe Ruttman after they lost the Folger sponsorship. And they all say, Morgan McClure's team all say that they're very happy with Rick Wilson. And Terry Labonte, he's running strong. He's already won one of the races this year at Rockingham. And, you know, there you can see from the in-car camera, we're taking a look at Bobby Allison's rear deck lid as Buddy Baker gets jostled about. Look how quick the stripes go by. You really get a speed sensation.
Moving at well over 150 miles an hour at this point on the racetrack, braking for the corners, but going well over 150 miles an hour on the straightaways.
Now, this car right behind Buddy Baker, that's Sterling Marlin, and there you can see the smoke. We were getting reports that there was smoke coming from the engine compartment or out of the exhaust from that Bullseye car, and it looks as if, at least from the in-car camera, as it is indeed the fact. And that would be a tough break for that Haas Ellington team because they're very high on Sterling. Sterling's done quite well qualifying everywhere. You can see the smoke again. Not sure, though, whether it's tire smoke or engine smoke.
Well, I've been noticing that throughout the race, and it appeared to be tire smoke to me. We'll keep our eye on it. Right now, Sterling Marlin is running in 8th position. So he's doing well in that car, and I don't think there's any indication that there is something seriously wrong with the engine of that machine. TranSouth 500 from Darlington International Raceway for you this afternoon on ESPN Live. 64 laps have been completed. The leader is Dale Earnhardt. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Dale Earnhardt leading the TranSouth 500 at Darlington International Raceway. There he is in corner number 3. His advantage over Ricky Rudd about 2 seconds right now.
But Ricky Rudd's going to have his hands full momentarily because directly behind Rudd is Joe Ruttman, and behind Ruttman is the 33 car, Harry Gant. Gant is really on the move. He's been working his way up through traffic, and he's going to challenge for that 2nd and 3rd position shortly.
That's Bill Elliott running right behind Ricky Rudd, but Elliott has lost a lap already here in the first 67 of this event. So it appears as if Bill Elliott's threat to make it 3 in a row here in Darlington have already gone away.
There's a safe margin there for 2nd position. The 2 green cars, however, that'll be a contest for a spot, and that, of course, is actually Ruttman and Harry Gant. Earnhardt is really driving an incredibly smooth race, Bob. He's been working through traffic. He's been up on the high side of the racetrack, down on the low side, and it looks as if things are going quite nicely for the Wrangler machine.
He just put a lap on the number 82 car of Mark Stahl from San Diego, California. One of the drivers from the West Coast that have joined Winston Cup competition here in 1986. Now putting a lap on the number 64 car, which is being driven this weekend by Connie Saylor.
It's hard to believe that they've announced, Elmo Langley has announced that he's going to sell his entire operation after the Winston 500. But there's Gant. And there's the battle we're talking about for that third spot. Gant looks to the inside, tries to get up alongside of Ruttman.
And he got it.
Yes, he does.
Into third place goes Harry Gant from Taylorsville, North Carolina, the 46-year-old driver, with Hal Needham and Burt Reynolds owning this car, and Harry is definitely on the move. Now, right ahead of him is the lap car of Bill Elliott. His concern is to get around Elliott and then set his sights on second place Ricky Rudd.
And getting around Elliott is going to be no easy task. Elliott knows that he's there. Rudd knows that Elliott's there. He's going to work the race traffic, Rudd that is, to his advantage to try and use number 9, Bill Elliott, as a moving pick to keep Harry Gant at bay.
Picking up perhaps a little bit of a draft there on the backstretch. And number 33, Skoal Bandit Chevrolet. Crew chief on this car is Travis Carter. Right now, Harry is 8th in the point standings with a couple of top 10 finishes this year. His best is 2nd at the Rockingham 500.
Bob, watch as they come down out of turn 2 and go down the backstretch. They'll begin to close up. You were asking before about how useful the draft was. Well, that's where it's useful. You pick up that air, you try to use it to your advantage. Gant looked to the inside, saw he wasn't going to have enough time, and what separates them so much as they go into the corners is just how hard on the binders do you get.
All right, we talked about the rule changes and the fact that that rear spoiler is now higher than it was allowed to be earlier.
Elliott's
and there goes
racy.
Elliott.
What's Elliott up to? He's going to try and pick back the spot and maybe work back up. Went to the inside. Rudd just hanging in there on the high side. The track narrows out of 2. Elliott gives way and Rudd holds on.
Fords racing against each other here, not for position, but Bill Elliott trying to get his lap back. Now, does the larger rear spoiler have an effect on drafting?
Yes, it does. It should aid the drafting process.
Oh, they touch in turn number 4. That was Harry Gant who was trying to go to the inside of Bill Elliott, and they touched as they come out of 4, and boy, it was a miracle that somebody didn't lose control.
He was loose in the middle of the turn, tried to gather it in. That's why Harry Gant went down to the inside. Now he's checking everything over before he goes back to full throttle racing, because that was scary. He traded some paint, some sheet metal with a lapped car.
Now Harry's concern is keeping third position because Joe Ruttman was behind Gant and Elliott as they touch there in turn number 4, and Ruttman now is right up on Harry Gant's bumper.
Bob, it takes a couple of laps for you to be sure that maybe you haven't rubbed a fender down to cut a tire or something like that. Once you know. Now watch this. He's on the inside. Harry Gant trying to hold on, has already lost control, frammed up again.
Oh, look at that.
Just absolutely just laid right into Bill Elliott, but a good job by Joe Ruttman.
Absolutely. He was right there on the bumper of Harry Gant, but did a fine job of avoiding the problems. Gant was almost totally sideways there in the 4th turn, where we saw a lot of accidents yesterday in the Grand National race, and somehow managed to keep control and gather it in.
Well, you can look, the lines change, though, on Harry Gant. Gant's got his hands full. He's going to have to hold Ruttman off in a different way than he was before because he's going way high in the corners. Ruttman's going to sense that, and he's going to try and go way low and get the position.
Well, if you're as old as I am, you can remember when green was bad luck in auto racing, but I guess these two cars here battling for position out there, an indication that that certainly is not true anymore.
That went away when they started paying off in greenbacks, in money. They said no problem with green as long as you wanted to pay.
Our 2858 update on the air for you right now indicates that earlier this morning in Spain, Ayrton Senna was the winner of the Spanish Grand Prix, and what a tremendous race that was as he beat Nigel Mansell at the line by 1/100th of a second. Mansell just stood on the accelerator and closed in on Senna in the final laps and almost pulled off the victory, but Ayrton records victory number 1 in 1986.
Bob, here at Darlington, this is a heck of a battle for position down here in that position of 3rd and 4th. watching the 33 of Harry Gant. He goes so high up against the wall in both corners, and Ruttman just tries to reel him in inch by inch by inch. He's going to get by him eventually, maybe in about 7 to 10 laps.
Now here comes Harry closing in on the number 9 car of Bill Elliott once again, as the leaders are on the high side of the racetrack and the slower traffic on the low side. Well, let's go down to Dick Bergman in the pit area, who is with Travis Carter, the Harry Gant crew.
Well, Travis, what did that incident do to your car? How is it running?
I think it's going pretty good. We just got a little tight situation up there trying to get by Bill and trying to chase Dale down, but I think we might have to just sit and wait a little while and hopefully beat some of these guys out of the pits. All these guys are pretty strong and it's hard to get by them, and the track's a little slick right now. I think it's going to improve later on, and that's what we're trying to get ourselves in position, hopefully to be better late in the race.
That's Travis Carter. He's Harry Gant's crew chief.
And once again, he is running in 3rd position. Gant is running 3rd. Ruttman is 4th. Bill Elliott not on the lead lap. Ahead of Harry Gant is the 2nd place car of Ricky Rudd. And Buddy Baker with our in-car camera passes Richard Petty, and Buddy Baker is in 7th spot.
There you see the Neil Bonnet machine also directly behind Richard Petty's. Taking a look at him, you remember last week he just took one whale of a wallop up at Bristol.
That was an unbelievable situation because Neil Bonnet had jumped off into the lead of that Valleydale 500 at Bristol International Raceway in his Budweiser-sponsored car number 12, and he was looking so strong, actually pulling away from the rest of the field, when all of a sudden the car goes to the right and directly into the retaining wall. We asked Neil about that incident.
Well, Neil, you had your bell rung pretty good last week at Bristol. Is everything okay?
Well, I spent Monday and Tuesday trying to recoup. I've had a lot of wrecks at a lot of different racetracks at 200 mile an hour and everything, but I don't know why that particular wreck last week hurt me more physically than any wreck I ever had. But on about Wednesday, I got feeling better. Thursday, I felt a little bit better, so I'm going to be in good shape for the race, I hope.
That's Neil Bonnet, and right now he's in 8th position. The lead continues to be held by Dale Earnhardt. There he is. It's been his race since the drop of the green flag, when Jeff Bodine, the pole sitter, had trouble, and then Tim Richmond experienced handling problems. Earnhardt went in the lead, is still in the lead, and we'll be back after these messages. ESPN's Auto Racing 86 fans next weekend will be with us for the First Union Bank 400. That's at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. A half-mile racetrack, a lot different type of racing that we're seeing here today, but certainly a track that always has a lot of interesting racing. That's next Sunday. We'll be on the air live at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, the First Union Bank 400 from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. Let's get an update from the pit area. We go once again to Dick Bergman.
Well, I'm in Benny Parsons' pit right now, and the last time Benny came in, he changed rear tires and tightened up the stagger a little bit. That helped the car. They say it's running quite a bit better. He's got 30 tires to choose from for the next stop, and the crew says they're not going to change anything in relation to tire size. Next time in, Benny Parsons' crew is going to adjust the chassis. It just goes to prove man does not live by tire stagger alone.
Benny started 3rd and is in 9th position. There's Dale Earnhardt, a little bit of a wiggle out of that car in the 2nd corner, and we've seen very little of that in the first 88 laps of this race because that car appears to be handling so well.
We were remarking at how well it looked. It was reminiscent of the fine run both in the spring and again at the end of the summer here at Darlington by $1 million Bill, and it just looked the same, like the car was running on rails without any problems. But it's still early at the place they call the track too tough to tame. I've seen races here, Bob, where the drivers have gone out and have led all the way to the last 15 or 20 laps and then have the car crash and have them not finish. And this is too early to even be able to speculate as to who's going to be a victor. Earnhardt, I'm sure, would like to be.
One of 2 races we'll be televising for you from Darlington International Raceway on Labor Day weekend. Of course, the Southern 500 will be live here on ESPN.
And remember, the Achilles heel for Dale Earnhardt this year has been the last 3 laps at any event. He's had so many problems, so we're just going to have to just see if he's still there at the end. Look at this inside the car. It's like actually Neil Bonnet has gotten around Buddy Baker.
He has indeed, so that makes Neil Bonnet up into 7th now, and Buddy Baker back to 8th position.
Baker likes to point his nose down low a little bit as he goes into the corner there. There's that battle still being raging.
They do get around Bill Elliott, though. Both Harry Gant and Joe Ruttman have passed Bill Elliott, and so now we have 2nd, 3rd, and 4th running right together, nose to tail on the track.
A classic display of how tough it is to get around a lapped car. You see, they got around Elliott, and they closed right up on the rear deck lid of Ricky Rudd. Rudd still trying to use that traffic to his advantage, trying to pick and choose. He's going to go around Elmo Langley, 64, driven by Connie Saylor. Tries to hold them all up down the backstretch. Harry Gant's right there, looking for the spot.
And you know Joe Ruttman cannot be passed over because he is running a sensational race. Let's watch Harry Gant now to the inside of Rudd. Harry Gant moves into 2nd position in turn number 4.
And did you see how he sawed the wheel? He had it cocked all the way down, and here comes Ruttman now.
Ruttman to the inside, almost
Rudd covers
touching.
the spot. Rudd covered the spot, said, no way, one green car, a lap. I'm not going to let you get by too.
Let's see what Ruttman does on this lap, though, if he'll be able to pass Ricky Rudd and move into 3rd. It's a good battle for 3rd position. Ruttman does go low at the end of the backstretch. He'll try to take the spot in turn 3, can't do it.
It was obvious. The way to know whether he's going to be able to make the pass or not is if he isn't up alongside, midway down the backstretch, he's got to wait for the front stretch. Let's see if he looks to the inside again. Ruttman says, no, I'm going to take a bead on him here. I come across the start-finish stripe. I'm going to check out what his car's doing before I take a run on him again.
You know, Joe Ruttman here in the early stages of this race reminds me a lot of Rusty Wallace's race last week, qualifying not all that well, although...
the pass again down the backstretch. Let's see if he can make it down the chute.
Yes, he does.
Ruttman is looking good, is reminiscent.
So Ruttman started 6th and has moved into 3rd position. Rudd is back to 4th, and the interval between 1st and 2nd now, Dale Earnhardt and Harry Gant is 5.5 seconds.
But look at how far Harry Gant has pulled out. He's pulled beyond Rudd and Ruttman. He's just beginning to close in. Could it be that maybe he was being held up just because of the handling characteristics of the other cars? There's Ruttman, but he is nowhere near Rudd. We can look at the separation here in the long shot. There you can see he's beginning to close on that front position.
He is indeed. We said it was 5.5 seconds. We'll keep an eye on it every lap to see if indeed Harry Gant is closing in on Dale Earnhardt. This time it's 5.1 seconds, so he knocked off almost a half second. That's that last lap. There is 2nd place Harry Gant, and we pan forward now and pick up the leader Dale Earnhardt. There he is in corner number 4. So it's a nice advantage for Earnhardt, but Gant is definitely moving in.
And again, I keep harping on traffic, but with race traffic, as we see Ron Bouchard working on the backstretch. Yeah, look at that gas man. Boy, that's old Jesse. He's big enough to lift the car up, let alone both gas cans. You know, there's a team that's been bereft with controversy, Bob, over the last couple of weeks. There is no happiness in the number 98 camp, and there could be some problems down the road. Ron Bouchard being rumored to being desirous of getting out of his contract, and you just have to wait and see.
Now the interval is down to less than 5 seconds on the racetrack. It's 4.8 seconds, the lead that Earnhardt has over Harry Gant. It is down to 4.5 seconds. The fastest car on the racetrack is Harry Gant's.
And the key is, directly in front of Earnhardt are some 15, 16 cars, lap traffic. Look at stuff on.
Yeah, there's some distortion, something on the front end of that Jody Ridley car, number 75.
Could be some 100-mile-an-hour duct tape that isn't quite up to Darlington standards, beginning to peel away. Actually, yes, it will make him overheat if they don't get it off, because it looks like it may be some screening that he's picked up. He's going to come onto pit road and get it torn off. Jody Ridley in the Raymock team entry. Unfortunate for them, especially with a Pontiac, because there isn't that much open air. in the front grill area of a Pontiac. They pull it away. Was it a plastic bag?
It looked like a garbage bag. It really did. That's probably made its way from the grandstand onto the racetrack and has caused Jody Ridley to come in for a stop. Prematurely, he was running 16th because he has to come in and get that away from the radiator. They also choose to change the tires on the car on both sides, it appears. They've got the right side changed. Now the crew goes over and begins to work on the left side of the car. On the racetrack, it is Buddy Baker still chasing Neil Bonnet out there, and they are running in 7th and 8th spot.
It's a good run for Buddy Baker. You know, with his limited schedule, he's had some problems, but it seems as if the Oldsmobile is to his liking this year. They've worked very hard to get it up to snuff, and he loves Darlington. He gets so pumped up about this place. He says this is the race that he practices for, and then he goes down to it for the Southern 500, and that's the one he really wants. You see how he works the wheel, and if you look just above his wrist, there's the tachometer on the car. And now he comes down the straightaway. He begins to cock it around, gets around the car. Now watch as he gets set back up for the corner. He's got to saw that wheel all the way down, keep the car down. So you've got your hands full, especially when you're strapping 6'4" like Buddy Baker to wheel one here.
This is only his 3rd race in 1986. He finished 26th at Daytona and 15th at Atlanta. Buddy Baker running currently in the top 10 here at Darlington. The interval between 1st and 2nd, now about 4 seconds. As Dale Earnhardt continues to hold off Harry Gant's challenge.
Take a look at the RPM being turned by the racing engine. Wow, we're up to 7,000 right now, moving up to 7,500 RPM. Do you know what would happen to your car if you turned it at 7,500 RPM? It redlines, I believe, at about 3,000.
Yeah, you usually run them 3,500, maybe 4,000 at the outside, but boy, you're talking a lot of RPMs at 7,500.
And to do it for 500 miles and continuously for 4.5 hours, that's a good testimony to how tough these racing engines are.
367 laps make up this TranSouth 500. It's a 1.366 mile race course, and right now we have completed 103 laps. There is Neil Bonnet once again, who's running in 7th spot. In the Junior Johnson stable, his teammate Darrell Waltrip is currently in 5th place. 4th is Rudd, 3rd is Joe Ruttman, 2nd is Harry Gant, and the lead continues to be held by Dale Earnhardt. So we'll be back with more of our live coverage on this beautiful Sunday afternoon in Darlington, South Carolina after this.
Well, here's the real reason Jody Ridley had to make that pit stop. These holes are supposed to be round, and that's what the lug bolts and lug nuts go through. The left rear wheel on Jody Ridley's car was working loose. This thing was about ready to take a trip down the speedway and come off. That's why he had to make his pit stop.
But while he was in, they got the garbage bag or whatever it was off the front of the car. Now Jody is back up to speed out there on the racetrack behind Morgan Shepherd. Now the leader, Dale Earnhardt, has passed Dave Marcus and now is about to lap Rusty Wallace, last week's winner at Bristol. There are currently 16 cars on the lead lap, and he is about to, as a matter of fact, does lap Rusty Wallace, and so Wallace goes a lap down.
Earnhardt is just running so smoothly. Watch as he works through the corners. You don't see any bobbles. You don't see him having to really hammer at the wheel. He makes one quick cut with the wheel coming out of turn 4. He picks up a nice straight line beneath the start-finish line and gets himself set up for turns 1 and 2. He's got the car set up almost perfectly, at least for this point in the race. And Earnhardt is showing it by the amount of separation he's got over 2nd place, Harry Gant.
In last year's TranSouth 500 here in Darlington, Dale led 130 of the first 200 laps before mechanical problems hit him. And here in the Southern 500 last year, he was dominating the race until the engine quit on him. Now, let's run down the standings here. The leader is Earnhardt, 2nd is Gant, 3rd is Joe Ruttman, 4th Ricky Rudd, 5th is Darrell Waltrip. In 6th position is Bobby Allison, 7th is Neil Bonnet, 8th is Buddy Baker, 9th Benny Parsons, and 10th is Sterling Marlin. Running in 11th position is Morgan Shepherd, 12th is Cale Yarborough, 13th position is Tim Richmond, 14th is Terry Labonte, and then a lap down in 15th position is Rusty Wallace. Cars out of the race at this point include Jeff Bodine, who had trouble at the very drop of the green flag, also out of competition. Bobby Hillin Jr., the number 95 car of Davey Allison, has retired, and so has Ronnie Thomas. And Joe Ruttman, our third place car, into the pits for a stop.
Looks like they're going to go to right side rubber, take on fuel. See if any of the tires are flat there.
Is this a routine stop, or isn't it a little early for that?
This would have to be pretty close to a routine stop. Could be a little early.
111 laps have been completed. Good stop for Joe Ruttman. He goes back out onto the racetrack. But it's a stop under green, and so Joe Ruttman will, at this point, be down one lap. There's the leader, Dale Earnhardt, at the end of the backstretch. Still continuing to lead this TranSouth 500. Dale Earnhardt has led 92 of the first 112 laps.
Bob, we should figure that within the next 10 to 12 laps, we'll see all of the top runners beginning to pit.
Well, let's find out if it was a routine stop for Joe Ruttman. Dick, what's the story down there?
Well, Bob, what they basically said is they're running low on fuel. It's a bit early to be running low on fuel, but in fact, they believe that was what their problem was. So they came in and put some gas in it and went back out again.
All right, so that is the story. It was a routine stop for fuel only. No problem as far as the engine is concerned or anything else. They just simply were running low on fuel. Here comes Kyle Petty.
This is a good indication, though, that pit stops will be coming up shortly, because the Fords usually pit 5 to 7 laps earlier. Both Fords are on pit road. Kyle Petty and Ricky Rudd, as you see, they're in for their regularly scheduled pit stops. So as I said, before 75 laps have been completed, we should see the entire field taking on fuel and tires. Rudd's down and away.
And ahead of him, Kyle Petty goes out of the pit area. Behind all of this, Rusty Wallace comes in for a stop, and he, of course, has just been put down a lap. There is Rusty Wallace's Alugard Pontiac, stopping in his assigned pit area, and rubber being changed on the right side of the car.
Now here is where you begin to hold your breath if you're out there, because you're hoping for a caution which would give you the advantage over other people. But if you're running out of fuel, you've got to come down here into the pits, you've got to take it on, and hope everybody else has to do likewise. There's your leader pulling onto the pits for his service. The Richard Childress team goes to work. They'll go for outside rubber and a full 22 gallons of fuel on the Chevrolet.
Just ahead of him, Tim Richmond in the lower right corner of your screen is also in for some work. There goes Richmond, and right behind him is Dale Earnhardt. There is Harry Gant, and Gant is staying out there on the racetrack, completing another lap, making it 116 laps. And Gant is in corner number 1, and Earnhardt is picking up speed in the second corner. And Dale stays on the lead lap, but just barely.
But they've narrowed the margin down. Narrowed it down considerably, but that was good work by the Richard Childress crew, because it was a fast pit stop, and it paid dividends. He was the only one of the top guys not to go a lap down.
Richard Petty comes in for a pit stop in the STG Pontiac. Crew going to work on that car. Everybody with an assigned job during pit stops. And you can see one of the crew members going inside the car to make a chassis adjustment. Here's Dick again.
Well, Dale Earnhardt sure made a fast pit stop, but he didn't quite get a full load of fuel. So, if they keep running on the green flag, Earnhardt's going to have to be one of the first ones in. He just took off before the fuel tank was full.
Well, that's an interesting development. So, Earnhardt may be in before anybody else to get more fuel. There's Bill Elliott, pulling back out on the racetrack, having made his second pit stop of the afternoon. Coors Melling Ford gaining speed, entering the track in corner number 1.
that could really create some problems later down the line, Bob, if he didn't take on a full 22 gallons of fuel and this thing continues to run without any really sizable caution flags. He's going to have to come in earlier than everybody else, and that's going to cost him dearly. Morgan Shepherd, the winner in Atlanta, brings his Buick to service by the Race Hill Farms team headed by Jack Beebe and Jake Elder. And they do say that the reason they changed the tires is it takes just as long to fill it with 22 gallons of fuel as it does to change outside or inside tires. So they just accomplish both under green flag conditions without losing time.
Harry Gant is the leader of this race. He has not made a pit stop. And we're watching to see if he chooses to come in this time. No, he stays out there. And neither has Darrell Waltrip, Neil Bonnet, Buddy Baker, or Benny Parsons been in for their second stops.
Now, Harry Gant is one of the drivers that runs with that fuel flow meter. We've done a track fact on it before, which literally will tell you just how many gallons of fuel you have left. So that's aiding Harry Gant right now as he waits for a caution flag.
Darrell Waltrip is coming in for a pit stop. His pit is the very last one toward turn number 1. So he has the entire length of the pit area to go before he comes upon his pit, and there it is. Buddy Baker is also in for a pit stop. We'll watch the Junior Johnson crew working, though, on the Darrell Waltrip car here. The rubber is changed on the right side, and the fuel in, and away goes Darrell Waltrip.
13.3, a very good stop for Darrell Waltrip. They didn't, by my count, make any sort of chassis adjustment, so that could portray how well the car is going, at least at this point in time.
Buddy Baker pulling back out onto the racetrack after having made a stop. Now here comes Benny Parsons in. Benny was running 9th prior to this pit stop. We have still not seen the leader, Harry Gant, working his way toward the pit area. And the only other car in the top 10 besides Gant that has not made a stop here in the race is Neil Bonnet.
Good time, 14.6 pit time for the Copenhagen team. And you know what was interesting there is they made no chassis adjustments. So that stagger going down to 5/8 on the last stop must have helped him.
Cale Yarborough is in. Now pits here on both the front stretch and the back stretch, and Cale Yarborough's pit is on the back stretch. There he goes, back out in contention. Harry Gant remains on the track. He is at the end of the back stretch. Let's see what happens here. He is getting excellent fuel mileage in this car. He's in turn number 3 now. We'll see if he takes the low road and comes in for a stop. He certainly does not. We'll choose instead to lap Tommy Ellis once again. Here is Neil Bonnet now in for the second stop, and now Gant is the only one in the top 10 who has not made a stop, as we anticipate Harry Gant's stop next lap.
A little unusual there. You see the man cleaning the windshield. That was Junior Johnson, usually over there with the Darrell Waltrip team. Pressed into service by Tim Brewer and Doug Reichert to take care of Neil's windshield.
Harry Gant is dropping low on the racetrack, and turn number 4 is now down on the apron of the track as Neil Bonnet pulls out. Harry Gant comes in. The leader is in for his second pit stop of the afternoon. Let's go to Dick Berggren.
Now here comes Harry Gant down pit road. They've been ready for him for 8 or 10 laps. The windshield on Gant's car is really streaked, and they go to work on it. Now, a couple of laps ago, Gant's crew thought they were really going to get a break. Hebron's car came down the front straightaway with smoke coming out of the exhaust. They tried to tell the NASCAR officials, hey, let's get a caution flag. They didn't get it, and instead he made a 15.3 pit stop just now under the green.
All right, we'll see how things shake out now here as Harry builds back up some speed and goes back out onto the racetrack. The lead is now being held by Dale Earnhardt once again. Dale is in the middle of the backstretch, while Harry Gant is now in the middle of the backstretch, so about a quarter of a lap, or rather quarter of a straightaway ahead at this point. So the second round of pit stops has been completed, and the TranSouth 500 has completed 126 laps with Dale Earnhardt back in the lead, and we'll be right back. at the TranSouth 500 in Darlington, South Carolina, with 130 laps completed. Dale Earnhardt is the leader. Harry Gant is second. Joe Ruttman third. Ricky Rudd is fourth. And Darrell Waltrip running in fifth position. We have 12 cars that are currently on the lead lap. Sixth is Bobby Allison. Seventh is Sterling Marlin. Eighth is Benny Parsons. Ninth, Buddy Baker. 10th is Neil Bonnet. 11th is the number 25 car of Tim Richmond. And then in 12th position is Morgan Shepherd. And right ahead of Morgan Shepherd, there is Morgan moving to the inside right now at the end of the straightaway, the front straightaway. And Dale Earnhardt is running right behind Morgan. So Morgan is in the chance of being lapped at the moment for 12th position. And running together on the racetrack is Bobby Allison and also Benny Parsons. And this is the race for 6th, 7th, and 8th position. And also Sterling Marlin there in car number 1 is battling for position. 3 cars in a race for the spot here.
Looks like Marlin wanted to follow Bobby Allison along the high side and then thought better of it. Benny Parsons stayed in his groove like he should as he maintained his line going into the corner. Now Benny's going to look to the inside of Bobby, see if he can get it. Looks like the cars actually wobble or wiggle a little bit as they come out of the corner. What it is the suspension taking a set as it comes out of the corner and getting ready for the run down the backstretch. Benny tried the high side one more time for the look up there, but Bobby covered the spot. Does he do it this time?
6th, 7th, and 8th going at it here. Benny to the inside of Bobby Allison at the end of the front stretch. The cars side by side. They go into turn 1 side by side, and Benny has the line. He goes into 6th spot. A nice move there by Benny.
And a nice move by Bobby, too. Bobby knows what the etiquette is. He said he was up alongside my doorpost. It's his position. He backed out, allowed Benny the free line going into turn 1.
Now we'll see if Sterling Marlin can talk Bobby into doing the same thing for him. There is Sterling Marlin in car number 1, the Bullseye Barbecue Sauce Chevrolet. Started this race in 7th spot. Marlin looks inside on the main straightaway as they cross the stripe. No move by Marlin.
Well, he had a good teacher, but he may need a little bit more remedial work before he tries it himself.
Bobby Allison from Hueytown, Alabama, driving for the Stavola brothers this year in that Miller American number 22.
And I think people ought to call him the new Bobby Allison. His enthusiasm for Winston Cup racing has been renewed. He's just so much fun to be around. Let's take a look at Sterling Marlin, see if he's going to get by Bobby. Marlin pulls alongside, but he's not up far enough, and it's still Bobby's position.
Not quite enough. Had he been just a few more feet further down the racetrack, he might have been able to take this spot away from Bobby Allison, but not this time.
The measurement is if you can put your windshield post up parallel to that of the car you're going to pass, then the car being passed backs off and gives you the spot. .135 laps have been completed out of 367 that will make up the TranSouth 500. Next week on the short track at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina for a 400 lap event there. We hope you'll be with us. We hope we have as great a weather as we have had here at Darlington all weekend long. There was a threat of rain, at least there was on Friday, but when we woke up this morning, skies were clear and the sun is shining brightly here with a temperature in the upper 70s. Irony to the Sterling Marlin ride with Hoss Ellington. You know who used to drive for Hoss Ellington, Bob, before a long, long time ago? Sterling's father, Cuckoo, drove for Hoss Ellington, so a second-generation driver still with the same guy.
Buddy Baker continues to carry our in-car camera. He's in 9th position at the moment. Right ahead of him is Sterling Marlin in car number 1, and also Bobby Allison. Behind him is the leader of the race, Dale Earnhardt, and also Neil Bonnet. Well, Dale Earnhardt has just lapped Buddy Baker, so we now have 8 cars on the lead lap, and boy, I'll tell you, Dale Earnhardt is just dominating this race.
Still impressed with just how difficult it is to see out of one of these cars so early in the race. When you take a look at the windshield, it's pitted and covered with all the debris that's been kicked up by 42 cars. You know, you got to figure a driver like a Buddy Baker to have to do battle at 150 miles an hour, looking out a window like that. I wouldn't want to do it, would you?
No, I think I would much prefer being in the position that I'm in right now. Now, Dale Earnhardt has also passed Sterling Marlin, so another car goes a lap down, and we have an engine, it appears, going blowing in turn number 3 as a lot of smoke is coming from the Sterling Marlin car, and he dives to the inside of the racetrack. Marlin is in trouble.
So it wasn't tire smoke before, it was just the little puffs.
And this will bring out a caution flag. He did not get into the pit area. He is low on the racetrack here on the main straightaway, and another caution period, our 3rd of the afternoon.
Tough break for Sterling. He's running a limited schedule, only 10 races with Haas Ellington, and they did so well at Daytona. We're running 3rd until 2 laps to go, and they ran out of gas. And then to come to Atlanta, they did well till the engine expired, and then to come here and have this problem after testing. They tested extensively down here, and then to have an engine go here.
Sterling Marlin in car number 1 started this race in 7th position. Now the pace car is about to pull out onto the racetrack ahead of the leader, Dale Earnhardt. There was some discussion about where to pick up the leader in this race, Jack, that you might explain.
Well, we go back to Atlanta International Raceway, where several of the top teams went a lap down as we watched the pit crew go to work on your lead car, Dale Earnhardt. But what it was is, if I recall properly, Tim Richmond was involved in Cale Yarborough, and they were accused of having gone a lap down because they passed the pace car. Well, they in essence didn't. What happened is the field didn't pick up the pace car the first lap under caution. The pace car pulled out while they, Richmond and Yarborough, were still in the pits, and then Yarborough and Richmond couldn't pass the pace car. So they were in essence put a lap down because they were stuck in the pits, and then because the pace car had not gotten out quick enough to pick up the field.
Benny Parsons also in for a pit stop. His work is completed, and he's back out there on the racetrack. We've been talking about tire stagger all afternoon, and we get more on that situation now by going to Dick Berggren.
Stagger, which is defined as the difference in size of the right rear versus the left rear tire, is one of the key variables that controls the handling of a stock car. These tires behave as if a solid axle connects them, and if they were in fact the same size, when the car got to the corner, it would try to move straight ahead, just as you see this tube moving in a straight ahead direction as it rolls down an incline. But if the left rear tire is smaller than the right rear tire, when the car gets to the corner, it behaves as if it's got a cone determining its direction, just as this ice cream cone tries to go in the leftward direction. Now, these differences aren't major. They range, in fact, from as little as 1/4 of an inch to about 1.5 inches and little more than that in any condition. But stagger is important. How important? When you see a competitor that's not running well in a stock car race, and he comes in and makes a pit stop and changes tires, he's not only putting on cooler tires that are faster, he's also almost certainly adjusting the stagger. And if he comes out and he's running faster than before, you can bet they got the stagger right.
The TranSouth 500 is 142 laps old, and we are under our 3rd caution period of the afternoon because of a blown engine on the Sterling Marlin car. We'll resume our activity from Darlington International Raceway in a moment. Welcome back to Darlington, South Carolina, where the green flag is coming out for the TranSouth 500 on lap 144. Dale Earnhardt has once again gone into the lead with Harry Gant running 2nd. Joe Ruttman is 3rd. 4th position is Darrell Waltrip. 5th is Ricky Rudd. 6th is Bobby Allison, and 7th Benny Parsons. Those cars are on the lead lap. Let's go down to Dick Berggren now for an update on the most recent round of pit stops.
Well, we were in Benny Parsons' pit, and he just changed 4 tires. He did it 2 tires, then he went out, took a lap, came in, and took 2 more tires. They put 4 brand new tires on it, and they made the left rear a little bit smaller than the right rear. So they're going to try to loosen it up. He is very close right now. The chassis is running quite well.
Well, hopefully in our next caution period, we'll get a chance to talk with Benny on the radio to find out exactly how the handling in that car is going for him at this point.
You know, Bob, we talked a lot early in the telecast about the run to the back by Tim Richmond. Look who's back in the lead contingent, directly behind Dale Earnhardt, and running actually 1 lap down is the 25 car of Richmond, but he's working his way back to the front.
Tim Richmond has had handling problems during the afternoon, and that's the reason why he is a lap down. But of course, if he gets those problems corrected, he very well could get back on the lead lap here by passing the leader, Dale Earnhardt. And then if there were another yellow to come out, he could make up that full lap. Darrell Waltrip is right behind Buddy Baker, and our in-car camera picks it up very nicely for you. Darrell going to the high side, and also Richard Petty. And it appears as if Buddy is slowing down because several cars got around him. He is to the inside of the racetrack, and it looks terminal. He's in turn number 2 right now, well down to the inside of the racetrack, and something has gone wrong in Buddy Baker's car.
We're going to try and... Terry Labonte's got a problem too. He's slowing down coming into the pits. We're going to try and take a good close look inside the cockpit of Buddy Baker's car to see if we can get an indication as to what's happened. There's one Oldsmobile that's gone behind the wall, the Piedmont Airlines car, and there you can see he's turning. Whoa!
Oh, we have a problem. Coming off of corner number 4, it is Phil Parsons into the inside wall. You can see Phil moving around in there. He appears to be okay. Not really that severe impact with the wall, but nevertheless, Parsons tastes the concrete here off of corner number 4 to the inside of the track.
In such a short span, in less than a minute, here comes the leader coming down to take that yellow flag. He'll maintain that position. In that shortest span, 3 of the 4 Oldsmobiles in competition, actually 3 of the 5 Oldsmobiles in competition, look like they're going to be going behind the wall.
Body work back on the left front tire of that Phil Parsons car. He'll be coming in, and repairs will be made to it, but I don't think that repairs can be made to the Terry Labonte car and the Buddy Baker car. We'll replay what happened up in turn number 4 with Phil Parsons.
Here's the car sideways. Now he's trying to, he should have locked the brakes up there a little bit quicker than he did. He saw the wall, tried to straighten it out. In the rookie races, in the rookie meetings, they try and tell you, keep the brakes locked. Don't unlock them and let the car move. That wall is big and hard.
Well, H.B. Bailey knocked down the wall there last year, and Charlie Luck had an accident in that location of the racetrack yesterday in the Grand National race. We'll be right back at Darlington, South Carolina. You rejoin us for the TranSouth 500 as the green flag comes out once again. They go 2 abreast into corner number 1. Neil Bonnet trying desperately to get his lap back, but he will not do it as Dale Earnhardt pulls away as they go down the backstretch. We did have a couple of pit stops on that most recent yellow flag period. Joe Ruttman and Darrell Waltrip both came in for pit stops, but both remain on the lead lap running in 6th and 7th spot. .153 laps have been completed. Earnhardt continuing to dominate this race. Bobby Allison came in for a pit stop also and replaced the windshield in that car in 23 seconds or something like that, Jack?
Well, it can be done. I've seen it done before. It's a fairly simple thing to accomplish. And look at Allison. Seemed like a new windshield didn't help Allison when he was trying to get around Joe Ruttman. Ruttman just blew by him. Benny Parsons thought better of it, though. Stayed glued to his rear bumper. But he does have a brand new windshield, and they did it in fine fashion very quickly without losing a lap. Positions changing here. Joe Ruttman moves into 4th. Bobby Allison there in number 22 is in 5th position, and Benny Parsons right behind in 6th. Parsons is having an excellent run. Really driving that car very, very well. And obviously, from what Dick Bergeron's kept us apprised of in terms of the chassis adjustments that are being made on the car is to his liking. And at this point in time, to have a car like that, you might be there at the end of this thing, challenging the track that's too tough to tame. Benny, of course, had high hopes yesterday as he was in the broadcast booth with us and expressed the hope that he could take that Oldsmobile to victory lane this afternoon, and he is certainly still within contention with 155 laps to go. Unfortunately, our in-car camera car has retired for the afternoon. Let's find out why as we go to Dick Bergeron.
Well, I'm standing with one of our best photographers for the day. Buddy, what happened?
Well, I really don't know. The car just quit running I really don't know what happened, but it just quit running. Was running, I guess, 7th, and the car was running good. not quite as good as Earnhardt, but we're running good. And
They're still working on the engine. Are you going to try to go back out and continue the race, buddy?
well, it depends on what it is. I can't really see any point now. We're 10 laps behind, but I'd like to say hello to everybody at Crisco and tell them the car's running good. Sorry it happened that way.
And they're changing the carburetor on that automobile right now.
And certainly thanks to Buddy for some excellent in-car camera work as he was in there fighting for position all during the race. Now look at Joe Ruttman putting some heat on Ricky Rudd.
He tried him coming into turns 1 and 2. Then he thought about it going out of turn 2. Let's see what happens when he comes out of turn 4. He really made an assault on him. Ruttman in the green car and Rudd in the red car. Rudd leads coming out of it. He's in 3rd position. Ruttman in 4th, looking for that 3rd spot. He goes to the inside. Is he going to make it? He's not up doorpost to doorpost yet. Now he is.
Yeah.
And he's through.
Nice move. Joe Ruttman has moved into 3rd spot, and a nice gentlemanly gesture there by Ricky Rudd, allowing Joe to slip by and go into 3rd spot. So Joe Ruttman looking very strong here with 158 out of 367 laps completed in the TranSouth 500. Ruttman into 3rd position.
You know, early in the year, the Ruttman team were having all kinds of problems with overheating. They weren't quite sure what the problem was. They discovered that it was a faulty set of stud bolts that they were using to attach the head. Then last week he was involved in the wreck and he tore the car all up. They have had nothing but bad luck thus far in the season, but Kenny Bernstein and company really felt like they had their act together coming down here and that they would be a contender for the victory here in the TranSouth 500.
He finished 11th in last year's TranSouth 500 and was 9th in last year's Southern 500. His best finish to date, of course, was his 2nd place that he ran at Richmond. But Joe is certainly one of those that can be winner number 12, different winner in a row.
No sooner had Ricky Rudd dispatched or been dispatched by Joe Ruttman than he's got to look in his rearview mirror, and what does he see? Bobby Allison. Allison beginning to haunt him, as well as Benny Parsons there. They are racing for a spot. The spot currently held by Rudd is 4th position, and you can be sure Allison's going to measure him up before he divides him and sets him to the side.
Still Rudd's Ford, the only one that is showing anything here this afternoon. Bill Elliott there is on the inside of the track in the main straightaway, but he is a lap down. So is Cale Yarborough. Yarborough is 10th a lap down, and Bill Elliott is 11th, also a lap down.
Well, Rudd is really given the Ford fans the only thing to shout about all afternoon. He qualified well, as we said, in the 8th position, and he's run up front all afternoon. Bud Moore sitting at home watching this. They're doing a great job. His son, Greg Moore, calling the shots in the pits, and the Motorcraft Special is running with the rest of the GM products and carrying that Ford nameplate, trying to defend some honor out there.
About the same time that Buddy Baker was dropping out of the race, so was Terry Labonte, who is 2nd in Winston Cup points going into this event. Let's go down to Dick Berggren.
And Labonte has already changed into his street clothes. Terry, what happened? Is obviously a terminal problem with the car.
Well, I'm not really sure. It looks like either the camshaft or timing chain broke.
And that's the 2nd time today we've heard possible camshaft break. Jeff Bodine said at the beginning of the race he thought that was his problem as well.
Terry, a former Winston Cup champion, looking to repeat in 1986, but is going to suffer a little bit this afternoon because he is out so early in this race.
Boy, Rudd has got his hands full, Bob. Everywhere he goes, he's being shadowed by Bobby Allison. And Allison is a master at making the pass. He'll wait, he'll lull you into a feeling that, well, I'm going to just stay back here and let you run a while, and then he'll strike like a cobra, get the position, and he's gone before you even know what happened.
Meanwhile, we go back up front and check on our leaders, and there is not that much racetrack between 1st and 2nd. Dale Earnhardt continues to lead, but not too far behind is Harry Gant.
Harry Gant is another one, as Dick Berggren reported to us, that Travis Carter said he felt that the car would come in a little later in the race, and we're getting down to that point now, and it looks as if that car's running at least as good as your leader. As you can see the separation between the two, not much, maybe 5-7 car lengths as they come across the stripe to score another lap.
Just a matter of car lengths now separating 1st and 2nd, and the leader is approaching a slower car over in corner number 2 down the backstretch. That is Bobby Waywack. Waywack moves to the inside, and Dale Earnhardt passes, but he does separate Earnhardt and Gant in the third and fourth turns. Waywack's that yellow car there. I'm sure Harry will be able to dispose of him as they come off of corner number 4. He does indeed get around, so it's clear sailing now between Harry Gant and Dale Earnhardt. Neil Bonnet is the third car there, the number 12 car, but remember he is a lap down in 8th. We have had 8 different leaders in this race, and Morgan Shepherd is trying desperately to get his lap back. Morgan is in 11th position, and he's right in that fight with Ricky Rudd and Bobby Allison.
He's at the bottom of the ladder, though. He's got to get by Allison. There downstairs, he does that. He accomplishes that position. Now he's got to get by Rudd. If he can get by Rudd, then all he has is 3 cars between himself and getting his lap back. But that's like starting in a hole and having to climb all the way back up out of it. But he's done it before. Remember in Bristol, he was almost a lap down early in a race, and he came back and won the Grand National event.
Morgan Shepherd was going for 3 Grand National wins in a row yesterday. However, his car expired early, and look at him go to the inside of Rudd now and powering past him. So Morgan is certainly showing some strength here. And now, as you said, will be trying to catch up with Harry Gant and Dale Earnhardt and get his lap back.
He pulls up to that lead duo, can do the same thing that he did there.
Yes.
Boy, everybody had better go down and talk to Jake and find out what sort of springs they've put beneath that Buick, because that car has improved tremendously from the start of the race.
It has indeed. The Race Hill Farms Buick. Jack Beebe owned, Jake Elder, the crew chief, on the car. Out of corner number 4. As I was mentioning, we have had 6 different leaders and 8 lead changes in this race, but basically it's been a race dominated by Dale Earnhardt. There is the interval between second place Harry Gant and the Morgan Shepherd car. And now we pan forward and show you the interval between first and second. It's opened up just a little bit as Dale Earnhardt now with about a second lead on Harry Gant. We're glad you could join us on this Sunday afternoon for live coverage of the TranSouth 500 from Darlington. We'll be back in a moment. Benny Parsons is in the pits. He made an unscheduled pit stop, but now gets back out there. You can see the Darlington stripe on the right side of that car, indicating that he's had contact, probably with the outside wall in corner number 4. A tough break for Benny Parsons, who was running in the top 10. As a matter of fact, he was running 6th. Let's go down to Dick Bergman, who's with Kenny Bernstein.
And Kenny Bernstein is Joe Ruttman's car owner. Kenny, what is your situation? Are you okay at this point?
Yes, we are. As a matter of fact, the problem before is a little gas. It won't take it all. But with the cautions, we're okay. The Quaker State Buick is just doing fine. It's handling as good as Joe thinks it's possible. We just need to stay out there and finish the race, and hopefully we get a break.
And this team indeed is running as well as it's run all year.
And we'll be seeing Kenny Bernstein racing this year in IHRA events that we'll be televising for you on ESPN. Kenny Bernstein, though, serving in the capacity as car owner here this afternoon for Joe Ruttman, who's firmly entrenched in 3rd spot. Earnhardt also has a little bit of scrape marks there on the left side of that car, and that indicates that he's had contact with another car as opposed to the wall.
Well, we've had some close quarters for Earnhardt, remember, early on in the race, but the guy that's going to get real close to him shortly is right behind him in the Bandit. Harry Gant is making up the gap little by little. It's ever so slightly, but there's still plenty of laps remaining. And you see the white tire smoke coming out of the number 3, the Earnhardt car. Now, people wouldn't be all that concerned if they saw that smoke at Bristol, let us say. But when you see a car here showing that sort of smoke working in the corners, you know it's not handling exactly the way you'd like. And if you're following it, that goes in your mind and goes in to remember to say, well, okay, he's got a problem there. Maybe I don't have to rush up and try and pass him.
There you can see the smoke coming off of the Dale Earnhardt car, but it's nothing serious at this point.
Just an indication that the chassis is not really perfect, and they can adjust upon that. Not to say to give anybody the cause for major concern, but if you're following a driver like that, you know too, well, he's not totally hooked up, so maybe I don't have to chase him down as quick and chance my machinery.
Mike Waltrip is the car that is being lapped, the number 23 Hawaiian Punch Pontiac. Both Earnhardt and Gann passed Mike there on the front straightaway. Mike in the number 23 red car, contending for Rookie of the Year honors this year. Started the race in 19th position. Earnhardt now moving up on a slower car. That is Ken Schrader in number 90, one of the Fords that had problems in qualifying.
So there you see he's beginning to close right there between Harry Gant and we've got a car that looked like Kenny Schrader's.
I believe that's the number 17 car of Doug Hebron that's down on the inside of the racetrack there. With smoke pouring from it. He's on the backstretch. The car is still smoking very badly. It's coming out of the exhaust pipe. And Hebron will be trying to get back to his pit area. The question is, will it necessitate a yellow flag? The green is still out this point. We'll watch that situation. It appears as if he's going to make it to the pits, and another car running very slowly coming into the pits in corner number 4 is Jody Ridley's machine.
Meanwhile, Harry Gant repeatedly is closed up to the rear deck lid of your leader, Dale Earnhardt, taking a look and then backed off just a tad as they go by Alan Kawicki on the inside. Earnhardt still out front, leading this thing with 178 events, 178 laps. But as the leaders go by, we're going to stay locked off so that you can see all the cars that are still in the race. As they come by, the leaders go by. They work down in turn 2, and you can see some of the separation. There's the Neil Bonnet car, the Hardy's car. Yarborough has just hit the stripe.
Also Ricky Rudd and Bill Elliott going by.
Petty goes
also
by.
Petty, Rusty Wallace, Jimmy Means, car number 52, still in the race.
Kyle Petty has gone by as well.
Dave Marcus, Rick Wilson.
Whoa, did you see that move?
Car way down to the inside.
That
That's
was
Earnhardt. Woohoo! Boy, did he get way down on the racetrack.
Let me tell you how that happened. Now, there again was a racer's mistake that almost cost Dale Earnhardt the lead and possibly his race car. As the drivers came down out of turn 4, Earnhardt was looking for a place to pass. 3 cars were deciding to dice for the position at precisely the same moment. So when Earnhardt went to the inside to make a pass, he was banged into as he got around Tommy Ellis and almost had to go onto the what they call no man's land down here to keep control of his machine before he could gather it back up, get by them, and get back into the racing groove.
There are 28 cars still in the race. That means we have lost 12. The most recent retiree, Jody Ridley, in car number 75. Also Doug Hebron in 17 is behind the wall. But Earnhardt is a leader. There's second place.
J.D. McDuffie there.
Second place Harry Gant, though, is right behind Dale Earnhardt, but really has not shown the muscle that it's going to take to challenge Dale seriously.
Still plenty of time, though, you know, and this is the one thing you can ask any driver that's driven here for more than 4 or 5 times. Say the first thing that I learned after I logged in my time here is how easy it is to use up a race car at Darlington. And then when you've got to go deep in the trunk near the end of a race, reach in for the bag of tricks, you find out that the bag's got a hole in it, that you've worn it out. A lot of these drivers, including Dale Earnhardt, will not use up everything they've got on a race car this early in the race. They'll try and hold back.
Crossed flags have been displayed to the leader, Dale Earnhardt. That signifies the halfway mark. We are halfway through the TranSouth 500. 184 laps have been completed. Dale Earnhardt, the leader, with Harry Gant second, Joe Ruttman third, Bobby Allison fourth, and Ricky Rudd in 5th position.
You know, there's a lot more up for grabs today than just the winner's part of the purse, of course. They made an announcement yesterday that Dygaard Racing has lost its position on the Winner's Circle program. Remember, they brought Willie T. Ribbs to Bristol to try and qualify. Well, by withdrawing their entry here at Darlington, they have officially been terminated from the 1986 Winner's Circle program. And that means that there is an additional wild card spot open for the rest of this year. The next driver or team that wins a race that isn't already on the Winner's Circle will go on, and it pays $7,000 for each super speedway that you enter and $5,700 on each short track. So that's about $160,000 up for grabs.
Anything shake a stick at, that's for sure. You know, we see smoke coming off of both the lead machine of Dale Earnhardt and Harry Gant, but Harry is staying right there in contention as Darrell Waltrip now begins to move. And Waltrip is right up on the back bumper of Ricky Rudd.
And that's Mr. Consistency. You have to call him that this year, and especially now with Terry Labonte, the runner-up in the point standings, being behind the wall. Waltrip just loves to finish in those top 3, 4, 5 positions. He said it's very difficult because you can't be the winner of the most races.
Spin in turn number 2. Rick Wilson loops over there. He is well down to the inside of the racetrack, but this will bring out a caution flag. And here comes Earnhardt off of the 4th corner. Now he is in corner number 3 right now, racing back to the yellow flag. Wilson, meanwhile, has gotten that car going once again. But here comes Earnhardt to the checkered flag, or the yellow flag, I should say. Not quite the checkered yet, and so we may see another round of pit stops during this caution period. So we'll be back to see what happens here as the yellow is out for the 5th time this afternoon from the TranSouth 500. Back at the TranSouth 500 at Darlington International Raceway, and pit stops are being completed once again. Benny Parsons is in for another time. Bobby Allison pulling out right ahead of him. The leaders, Dale Earnhardt, Harry Gant, Joe Ruttman, Ricky Rudd, and Bobby Allison all have been in 4 stops. This is Benny's 2nd stop in the last few laps as he made a premature pit stop. Now, Cale Yarborough is out there on the racetrack, and we'll try to establish some radio communication with him.
Cale, this is ESPN. We want to check and see how's your condition of the car now after that last round of pit stops.
Well, Jackie, the car's not handling all that bad now, but I got a bad fist in it. And that's caused me a lot of problems right now. It's pissing terribly bad through the center turns, and I just don't have any power when I come out of the turns.
You've had a chance to take a look, though, at Dale Earnhardt and how he's running as well as Harry Gant. What's your pick right now? Who's the strongest between those two?
Oh, no doubt about it. Dale Earnhardt looks like he's the strongest right now, but it's a long ways to go yet.
Thanks, Cale. We'll stay in touch.
Yellow is still out. 191 laps completed. Darrell Waltrip has come in for a pit stop, and he was in just a lap ago, so he apparently has discovered something not to his liking.
I can tell you it could be one of several things, Bob, but a lot of times a driver will go out. They had made a choice of tire stagger with all their forward tires, and they go out there, and all of a sudden the driver decides that there's something wrong and says, hey, let's go ahead, bring it back in and put the right ones on. We've got the time.
There's a tremendous amount of black soot or something on the back of that car. That may indicate some problem with Darrell. Well, our mid-race recap as we are just over the halfway point in this 367-lap, 500-mile race from Darlington International Raceway. And Dale Earnhardt has been the dominant force in this race. He has led 164 of the first 184 laps. The first half of the race was run in 1 hour and 51 minutes, and of course Dale far and away has led most of the laps. The average speed 134.768 miles an hour. We've had 4 caution periods for a total of 17 laps, 6 leaders, 8 lead changes, and there are some of the cars that have dropped out of competition. Jeff Bodine's afternoon was over very early as a problem developed in that car just as the green came out. Hill and Allison, Thomas, Bouchard, and Boyce also have dropped out of competition, along with Sterling Marlin, Terry Labonte, Buddy Baker, Doug Heverin, Jody Ridley, and Phil Parsons. That's the situation as we completed about half of the race, and now the pace car is coming off of the racetrack, and we are about to go back under green. Harry Gant certainly in a challenging position to Dale Earnhardt, but Earnhardt has been the dominant force so far. Here comes the green once again. We're back to racing. Rusty Wallace would like very much to get the lap back. He was alongside Dale Earnhardt when the green came out, but unfortunately Dale just blasts away from Rusty Wallace, so Rusty will have to wait for a while to try again to get the lap back.
Earnhardt's finally pulling away from Harry Gant, beginning to show his muscle on this restart.
Some really close competition there in the fourth corner as Joe Ruttman and Morgan Shepherd and Cale Yarborough and Bobby Allison are running side by side, nose to tail, some real tight competition. Now Earnhardt has about a half a straightaway lead on Harry Gant, and Ricky Rudd staying also right there close to Harry Gant.
The kudos have got to go to Ricky Rudd. He's been running a fine race right from the drop of the green flag. He's been right there. He hasn't led, but he's been right in the lead contingent, always ready to challenge if a miscue comes from someone in front of him.
There's the interval between first and second, and it's a tight battle for second between Gant and Ricky Rudd. Now, ESPN and NASCAR present a track fact.
What Noah Danner is doing is not a new Olympic exhibition sport. Tire bouncing is just part and parcel to being on a pit crew. Now, why do crewmen bounce their tires? Well, what they're trying to do is stretch the rubber so that they can build the proper amount of stagger into them for use on race day.
Jack has already decided that after his broadcasting career is over, he will become a tire bouncer. And this track fact has been brought to you by Levi Garrett Chewing Tobacco. Time after time, the quality comes through. We'll be back with more of our live coverage of the TranSouth 500 from Darlington International Raceway after these messages. We have a car on the wall in turn number 4. Just as we come back, Tommy Ellis loses control coming off of corner number 4, hits the inside wall. It keeps the car running, though. He hit it rather hard, but really does not show all that much body damage. Now, a couple of interesting developments had occurred just before this incident with Tommy Ellis. Benny Parsons pulled in behind the wall, and Darrell Waltrip had dropped down low on the racetrack.
Waltrip had dropped down low out of turn number 2, was just crawling at a snail's pace down through 3 and 4 when Tommy Ellis did his pirouette across the start-finish line to bring out the caution. So in a way, it's a break for Waltrip. He'll be able to come into the pits. He won't go a lap down. He'll be able to see what's wrong with it. There is Tommy Ellis limping onto the back pits for service from the Buddy Parrott prepared crew to see just what is wrong and what is salvageable on the number 18 car. Ellis had a whale of a ride, very reminiscent of the H.B. Bailey crash.
It really was, but he apparently hit on a glance and really didn't damage the car too badly. So the track crew comes out. The pace car also will be pulling onto the race course ahead of the leader, Dale Earnhardt. And Joe Ruttman, also Richard Petty and others are deciding that this is another good opportunity for them to make a pit stop. But the leaders, namely Dale Earnhardt, Harry Gant, Ricky Rudd, Bobby Allison, and others deciding to stay out there.
Well, now a crew member's gone inside of Ruttman's car trying to get to the jacking bolts in the back of the car to adjust. Now, the reason they got to go in that window is they can't get in through the side window on the driver's side. So they made an adjustment on the left rear wheel with the wedge bolt, and Joe Ruttman is back out on the racetrack. Activity continues on pit road on Darrell Waltrip's machine, as they're still going to have to find out just what it was exactly that pulled him off the pace. You alluded to it, Bob, before, that there was an awful lot of soot and debris on the back deck lid, more unusual than compared to other cars. There goes Waltrip, and you can see it almost obliterating his sponsor's name. Maybe Dick Berggren will be able to chat with Junior Johnson or possibly Jeff Hammond and find out what the problem is with car number 11.
Track crew is here on the main straightaway picking up pieces of debris left by Tommy Ellis when he hit the inside wall. Others making pit stops now include Bobby Allison, who's running in the top 10, but Earnhardt, Gant, and Rudd continue to run out there. And an interesting situation that we're going to be watching this. There is Bobby Allison getting the windshield wiped off. Morgan Shepherd's car had been perhaps the fastest car on the racetrack just before this yellow came out, and now he moves alongside Dale Earnhardt, and I think it's very possible that Morgan may get his lap back.
You know, Bob, when you see a spinning car, there's a lot more that goes on to getting people under control than just that. You know, you've got a lot of people all around you, all around this facility.
Many, many people run a racing organization and a racing team, not the least of which is a racing spotter. With more on that, here's Jack.
The next time you come to a Winston Cup race, sit down in those $60 to $5 seats, check who's sitting next to you. He may not be a race fan. It may be a guy like Benny Ertel here, who's the chief spotter for the Stavola Brothers Racing Team entry that's driven by Bobby Allison. Benny, what's your role as a spotter up here in the grandstands?
Well, Jackie, what we try and do is make sure that Bobby has a safe race through the entire length of the race. We know there's a lot of accidents going on. He can't see the track. When he's like in turn 1, we're watching turn 4 for him. So if there's a mishap, we try and let him know exactly what's happening.
Now, you say we. You're wired into Bobby. You give him all the information, but you've got a sidekick in Tom Roberts. He's monitoring the other race teams and NASCAR.
Right, that's absolutely right. We have a scanner that Tom Roberts uses that scans other race teams where we can know what kind of tire changes they're making and what NASCAR is also calling, whether they're going back to green or if Bobby needs to stay out for a few more laps, we'll let him know.
Let's eavesdrop a little bit on the conversations between Ertel and Bobby Allison.
We have caution in turn 2, Bobby. There's a car up against the wall. Stay low and come on through. You look good. Okay, Benny, I got you.
Obviously, if you make it to victory lane, the conversation on the radio on the cool-down lap's a little more jovial.
Last lap, victory lane looks good from here. I'll meet you over there, Bobby.
Well, Bobby is on the lead lap. He's 6th right now, but certainly still has a chance at winning this race. Dale Earnhardt, I think, has the better chance at this point, and we have a crash up in turn number 2. 2 cars are involved in it. Ricky Rudd and Harry Gant, 2nd and 3rd, wipe out in turn 2.
That's how quick things can change at Darlington. You can be running as strong as those 2 gentlemen were and have it all come to a crumpled heap at the bottom of turn number 2.
And another situation that had developed while we were watching that Bobby Allison chief spotter piece, Morgan Shepherd, who was lined up right beside Earnhardt and who was running very strong. When the green came out, he punched the button and the car simply would not go, and there he is in the pit area with the crew checking over the motor.
That's a tough break for those gentlemen because they were coming up, as I said, out of a ladder, but they were showing some muscle equal to what they showed in Atlanta when they won the Motorcraft 500. But it's obvious that it's not going to be their day for victory, and the hood goes up on that Buick.
We are seeing some interesting things develop here in the mid portion of this race. Now we'll take a look at what happened over there in turn number 2.
Well, they've already come together on the high side. One car that looks as if it's being center punched by Ricky Rudd. That's Harry Gant. It's actually T-boned into the driver's door. Look at Allison dip to the inside to get around them both.
And that is exactly what we were talking about when we were watching that spotter piece. I'm sure that his chief spotter did indeed inform him of the trouble ahead. Now Earnhardt is in for a stop, so is Darrell Waltrip, Rusty Wallace, Richard Petty, Kyle Petty, Joe Ruttman, while Ricky Rudd is also out of his car and appears to be okay. Well, a big disappointment for both of these drivers who really were running so well out there today. 2nd and 3rd position getting together over in turn number 1. Harry Gant and Ricky Rudd crashing and bringing their hopes of a victory here today to an end. Both drivers are okay, though, as the ambulance moves away and goes back to its position. Some pit stops have been completed. We'll be going back to green in a few moments with Dale Earnhardt, the leader. We're delighted you could join us today for the TranSouth 500 from Darlington, South Carolina, brought to you by Dodge, a performance revolution, and American Revolution. And by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will. And by Mr. Goodwrench. No one knows your GM car better than Mr. Goodwrench. No one. Whether 211 laps completed here in the TranSouth 500 as the race fans settle back for some more racing action that we'll be going to in just a moment. We are yellow right now. The leaders show Dale Earnhardt in the top spot, but Bobby Allison now in second, Joe Ruttman third, Darrell Waltrip fourth, although Waltrip is having some problems. Neil Bonnet in fifth position. Now, Darrell has been in for numerous pit stops here in the last few laps. Let's go down to the pit area where Dick Berggren has this updated report.
Well, Darrell Waltrip's problem is really one they're still trying to diagnose. They know they have a problem underneath the car somewhere. At first, they weren't sure. They thought maybe the car was even on fire. It was throwing sparks. They thought they might have picked up some sort of debris, so they're working on it. Here, however, is definitely the problem with Morgan Shepherd's car. This is the rotor button. This controls the timing. And look at how that pin moves back and forth. That pin has got to be absolutely fixed, stable, or the timing in the car gets fouled up. They've got a new one of these on now, so Morgan Shepherd ought to be back to the speed he was at before he had this problem.
And he was looking very strong, but when the green came out for the time before this, coming back to green from yellow, he just simply lost power in that car. Now both Tim Richmond and Darrell Waltrip are on the apron of the racetrack and about to come in for another stop.
Well, what Waltrip's doing is trying to stay on the lead lap, so he comes in each time, they jack it up, look underneath there, work as much as they can for 15 or 20 seconds, then drop the jack and send him around again. The entire Jeff Hammond-led team is set to swarm all over the Chevrolet driven by Darrell Waltrip. Waltrip will just remain inside the car, hold the wheel, and it is in the rear end area. We noticed that they had the rear end grease out and available, which led us to speculate that possibly maybe the rear end itself was beginning to come unglued, as they say, but so far they have done very little other than look. So we're just taking a look at Darrell Waltrip talking back and forth to Jeff Hammond, his crew chief, letting him know. Again, Darrell running in the top five, being posted in the fourth position, but this is not a good place, Bob, for the fourth place man to be sitting on pit road.
Well, that's for sure. There's Ricky Rudd's car on the hook being taken off of the racetrack. Again, both Gant and Rudd are okay from their accident over in turn number 1. And you know, a guy that's looking real strong here is Bobby Allison. He certainly is in a good position to win this thing.
He is in a good position to win it, and as I said early in the telecast, 1986 has presented a totally different Bobby Allison than we saw in the last 2 years or so. He's jovial, he's happy, he has a spring to his step again. He enjoys racing. It doesn't seem to be as much of a chore, even right down to testing and practicing. Bobby's always out there and enjoying it.
Let's go down to Dick Berggren.
Well, I'm with Harry Gant, who was involved in that incident. Harry, what caused the crash?
Well, you know, the slow cars try to run you all the way down the corner, and you try to get by them, you know, and they run in so hard that they see you coming, I reckon. They try to get by in front of you. He'd go in real hard and slide up about 3 inches on me, and I couldn't stop, and I was going on by on the outside, but I figured he's going to back on off and hold it down. He moved up a little bit, and I, you know, 6 inches all I caught him in the back end, and there we went. I went around, Ricky Rudd got me then. But it's been a problem all day at the slow cars. Lap cars, they won't let you go, and you drive into the hole. Instead of cracking it and let you dive in, they want to run you inside beside, or run you up on the outside, or run you over the 4-turn wall. They just don't seem to care today. It's a rough day for them.
Now today the drivers' meeting was a little bit different. Everybody got to see the same film that the rookies usually see, including all you veterans. And when it was over, everybody applauded. Didn't anybody learn anything?
Everybody done opposite of what that film. They told them what to do this morning. Everybody's done real bad today. You know, everybody out there is wanting to race you. Nobody won't let you go by. You know, when you're trying to race to win the race, other cars are just racing to be there. They want to race the leaders all the time. They don't want to let you go by.
Well, Harry Gant obviously disappointed. He's out of it.
But Harry will be back another day, certainly, and in the winner's circle, you can bet on that. We'll be back with more from the TranSouth 500 after these messages. And Neil Bonnet has gotten ahead of Earnhardt, and so has Cale Yarborough and Bill Elliott. But now here comes Yarborough side by side with Dale Earnhardt. These three cars trying to get their lap back. Right now, Bonnet and Elliott have gotten their lap back, and Cale is trying to.
And these laps that those guys are running are just as important as the ones with the checkered flag right now, because if they have any hope of being in contention at the end of the event, they've got to stay out in front of Dale Earnhardt. Earnhardt knows it, looks to the inside of Cale Yarborough, then backs up behind the Ford and says, let's see what you do in turn 3.
Earnhardt once again inside of Cale Yarborough. Let's see if Earnhardt can pass him, and as Yarborough gets just a little squirrely off the fourth corner, and Bobby Allison also passing Cale Yarborough, so Cale does go a lap now. Well, let's get down to the pit area where Dick Bergman is with the other driver involved in that incident just a few moments ago, Ricky Rudd.
Well, Ricky, the car looks pretty well beat up, but you seem okay.
Yeah, I'm not too bad of shape. Just pulling some neck muscles. Like I say, I'm a lot better shape than that race car right now.
You were running well today, though.
Well, we run second and third. Earnhardt was a little bit too tough for us in early goings. We made some adjustments on the car to try to catch up to him, and the adjustments that we made to the car slowed us down. So we ended up going back the way we started, and we started running good. Got up to third, was back up to third again right on Harry's back bumper when he got tied up with that lap car going into first.
Okay, we've got a yellow flag on the speedway. There is a car outside way on the racetrack.
And that is Jimmy Means in car number 52 at the in turn number 3. Now they're racing back to the yellow, and it appears as if both Neil Bonnet and Bill Elliott will gain their laps back. Here they come off of the fourth corner, and they cross the stripe, and yes, indeed, both Bonnet and Elliott get their laps back. So now we're going to have 6 cars on the lead lap instead of 4, as both Bonnet and Bill Elliott will circle the entire racetrack and catch up to the rear of the field but be on the lead lap. And have you noticed that Bobby Allison is hanging right in there on the back bumper of Dale Earnhardt, as we see Jimmy Means, who looped up there in turn number 3. We believe he's all right, but he is being talked to. He's about to climb out of the car, we believe. He's receiving some assistance, but yes, there is Jimmy Means climbing out of the car and appears to be in good shape. It occurred in turn number 3, Jack.
Well, you can see he's already gone spinning up in the wall. He does what's right, tries to keep it up against the wall, and then it starts to come down right in front of everybody. He's got the wheels locked up like you should, points the nose of the Pontiac, reverse steers it, comes to a stop. That's tough for a guy like Jimmy Means. That is the one and only super speedway car that gentleman owns. That's the only 86 model he's got, and he's got Talladega coming up.
Not one of the more well-financed teams. Jimmy pretty much running his own operation, and when you damage the car, you lose a lot of money. Joe Ruttman back out on the racetrack after a pit stop. Here comes Neil Bonnet, also Bill Elliott in for routine maintenance, while Dale Earnhardt stays out there on the racetrack. We might update you on Jody Ridley's situation. He went behind the wall several laps ago, but has since come back out onto the racetrack and rejoined the race.
For those guys that were in danger of going a lap down, it was a game of short straws, and it looked as if Cale Yarborough pulled the short one, because this gentleman, Bill Elliott, got his lap back, as did Neil Bonnet. But remember, Cale Yarborough went down a lap and is still down a lap behind Dale Earnhardt.
221 laps completed as Bill Elliott goes back out onto the racetrack. The pace car remains on the speedway, so it'll be a couple of more laps before we resume our racing. We'll take this break and be right back to Darlington, South Carolina.
Well, I'm with Richard Childress. He owns the car that's in the lead right now, driven by Dale Earnhardt. And on this caution flag, you've been looking at lap charts. What do you see?
Well, it's doing about like we had anticipated. The race pace has picked up a whole lot. And, started out around a 32.50, and we're back to like the last time we ran 31.60 to start out. Settled down around a 32.20, so, you know, we're about where it was anticipated.
What is he telling you about the car? Is he happy with his performance?
Yeah, he says the car is doing what he wants to, and, you know, earlier he kind of backed off a little bit. Now he's just running it whenever he has to.
Still a lot of race to go. How are you going to run from here to the Checkered?
Well, you know, we'll leave that pace kind of up to Dale, but, you know, we're just a little over halfway, and we're just hoping we can get those last 3 laps in today.
They've had trouble with those last 3 laps. On 3 occasions, they've dropped out with only 3 laps to go. So that's the point of the race that they're really watching for.
That certainly was the case last weekend at Bristol when Dale was running up front, and then all of a sudden, with about 3 laps to go, dropped to the inside of the racetrack and fell out of competition, although he did end up in 6th finishing spot in that Valley Dale 500 last weekend at Bristol. Pace car is still on the racetrack. He has led 202 of 224 laps in this race, so you can see how very well that car has been running for Dale Earnhardt this afternoon. We remain under yellow. We'll get this break in, and then we'll be right back. Once again, the green has just gone on at Darlington International Raceway in the TranSouth 500. Dale Earnhardt is pulling away from the field as 23 cars remain running. Bobby Allison is second. Cale Yarborough tried desperately to gain his lap back on that restart, but was unable to, as both Earnhardt and Bobby Allison just took off from the rest of the field.
Allison has got a lot of seemingly newfound power, Bob. He's staying right there with Earnhardt, not letting him out of his sights, and just motoring around this place. You know, Bobby Allison would make this the 12th winner too. Bobby is one of the guys that hasn't won in enough races yet, so he'd be the 12th place in the 12th race.
One thing about Darlington is, generally speaking, the winner comes out of the top 10 qualifiers. The last time that a winner outside of the top 10 won this race was this man, Bobby Allison, in the Southern 500 back in 1983. Strong performance by Bobby this afternoon here at Darlington. Bobby Allison, for many years associated with the Nygaard Racing organization, but this year going with the Stavola brothers, who really field 2 cars on the Winston Cup circuit. Bobby Hillen, also a driver for that team. Bobby dropped out of competition earlier this afternoon, involved in an accident over in turn number 3. You can see the oil dry that's there in the high groove on turns number 3 and 4. That was put there by Jimmy Means' spin, and it's creating some dust over there in the 3rd and 4th turns, but not a major problem. Cale Yarborough is 3rd there in line, but remember, he is a lap down as 6 cars remain on the lead lap. In addition to Cale Yarborough, Tim Richmond and Rusty Wallace are a lap down. 3 laps down is Richard Petty in 10th position. 4 laps down is Kyle Petty. Then 5th, 5 laps down in 12th position is the number 35 car driven by Alan Kowicki, the rookie. Now, Darrell Waltrip may have solved his problems, as he is putting some challenge there on Cale Yarborough. And Darrell Waltrip is running in 3rd position. Well, the Nygaard team that Bobby Allison used to run with has had its problems, and we asked Bobby Allison to comment on that.
Well, I had a lot of good times with Nygaard, and you know, they felt I was the problem, and I left, and you know, I haven't really stood the world on its ears since then, and I'm sad to see that their problems have continued. And you know, I think of the good times I had with them. You know, that came to an end, and someday we'll all be able to sit down as friends again somewhere. And, you know, I just feel sorry for him.
Nygaard did not enter a car here at Darlington, but word is that Willie T. Ribbs is practicing with that team at North Wilkesboro and may try again next weekend.
I think the tragedy that Bobby Allison alluded to with Nygaard Racing in particular is for the number of years that they stood for quality competition. They had drivers like Ricky Rudd, Darrell Waltrip in his Gatorade years, Bobby Allison with a Winston Cup championship that eluded him for so long. And then at the end of last year, the ball seemed to come unraveled. We saw Bobby leave. Then Gary Nelson announced his departure. Then this year it was Robert Yates leaving. Greg Sachs being announced as the driver for all of the races in the TRW sponsored entry. And then Willie T. Ribbs. When they came to Bristol, Tennessee, you were hard pressed to look, for those of us that have been around the Winston Cup circuit for so long, and say that that was a Nygaard Racing operation. Brother Jim Gardner has been fired. He's gone into business for himself. The question that I have for Bill Gardner is, Bill, what are you up to? What are you going to do? This is a far cry from the quality Winston Cup entries that for so many years you presented at racetracks up and down the East Coast, in the Midwest, and in Riverside, California.
We hope they can regain that status just as soon as possible. Darrell Waltrip and Cale Yarborough continue to run nose to tail on the racetrack, and behind Darrell Waltrip is Morgan Shepherd and then Joe Ruttman.
Now remember, Ruttman is racing for a position with Waltrip. Waltrip is being posted in 3rd position, Ruttman in 4th, and they're both having their hands full getting around this man, Cale Yarborough. Yarborough, they say, is one of the toughest drivers in the world to get around, but that guy, Darrell Waltrip, he'd like to get around him so he can go race for that 2nd position that's being held by by Bobby Allison.
Morgan Checkered also trying to find some racetrack that will allow him to pass Darrell Waltrip. Remember when Morgan was in for several laps. As a matter of fact, he is 6 laps down on the field after experiencing a problem in that Race Hill Farms Buick, but the problem is corrected, and Morgan trying to make the best of it.
You heard Harry Gant allude to the fact that lap traffic was a problem here today. Well, it's always a problem at Darlington, and some of this lap traffic is very fast. Now, they go around one of the cars, Bobby Waywack's machine, and that's a slow lapped car. But Morgan Checkered is a lapped car, number 47. Cale Yarborough is a lapped car, number 28. They've got enough speed to make the drivers on the lead lap literally peel the helmet off and take the hair off their heads. They're so frustrated because they can't get by them.
A lot of difference between the lap cars of Cale Yarborough and those of, for instance, Connie Saylor that they're passing on the backstretch right now. A lot of speed difference between those two types of cars.
But the faster ones are the ones that cost you precious, valuable time when you're trying to chase down a competitor for position. And that's exactly what's happening to the likes of Joe Ruttman as he looks, and Darrell Waltrip as he looks ahead. Ruttman sees Morgan Checkered, who wants to pass him, although he's a lap car, and Waltrip sees Cale Yarborough.
In case you did not watch the Formula One race this morning that we presented from Spain here on ESPN, Ayrton Senna edged out Nigel Mansell for the win. Mansell put on a strong charge toward the end and wound up 1/100th of a second behind Ayrton Senna. Finishing 3rd was Alain Prost, 4th Keke Rosberg, 5th Theo Bobby, 6th Gerhard Berger, 7th Thierry Boutsen, and 8th was Patrick Tambay. The first 8 finishers in today's Spanish Grand Prix that we presented for you here on ESPN. And we have a problem as a car spins and hits the wall. It's Morgan Checkered, and Ruttman goes with him to the inside of the track.
Lap traffic. What did I say? Exactly the problem. Morgan Checkered, a lapped car, spinning to avoid that lapped car, is the guy that was running in the 4th position.
And
Joe
once
Ruttman.
again, bad luck bites Joe Ruttman. Unbelievable. I don't think he's going to lose a lap here, but he probably has damaged that car to the point that it's not going to be competitive as it has been all afternoon. Morgan Checkered's car, meanwhile, remains parked against the outside wall at the entrance to the backstretch. Here's a replay.
Let's take a look at it. You see Checkered's up into the wall all by himself. He begins to spin, and taking avertive action is Joe Ruttman. Ruttman gets on the binders, goes downstairs, rides the elevator down, spins it around. Richmond just shoots the eye of the needle and gets through, but there he hits the inside retaining wall. Now let's watch Ruttman. Let's study him specifically. Ruttman, and there's Richmond. They've already seen the accident. Ruttman is turning hard left. He's got the car in a spin. And look at Richmond. What a great job by Richmond. Turned left. Now go right, Timmy. Comes right through it. He's unscathed. Ruttman is dented and dinged.
Ruttman has not made the pit stop yet, is staying out there. Dale Earnhardt is in for a pit stop. This is the 9th caution period of the afternoon, and there is the body damage suffered by that Morgan Checkered car as it limps home. Earnhardt back onto the racetrack. Harry Gant, by the way, is back on the track. Just as this yellow flag came out, Harry went back out onto the racetrack, and he is matching the number on the side of his car, 33 laps down.
Well, it kind of looks like a Darlington car about this time. We usually see 1 or 2 of them that have been through the war. Pit crews peel all the sheet metal off him. But he's going to be a lot of laps down. He'll have his hands full driving something like that too, Bob.
A spin has brought out a caution flag, the spin involving Morgan Checkered and Joe Ruttman, but Tim Richmond makes it through. We'll be right back. Our coverage of the Stanley Cup playoffs continue tonight as the Philadelphia Flyers take on the New York Rangers. That'll be live at 7:30 here on ESPN. Boy, do we have a tremendous lineup of hockey games for you right through the finals of the Stanley Cup here on ESPN tonight. Philadelphia and New York at 7:30. The green comes out on the TranSouth 500 once again. Here we go, back to racing. Darrell Waltrip is the leader.
And Yarborough's trying to get his lap back this time from Waltrip. He's down low, coming out of turn 2. They are side by side, trying to pick up that position. Yarborough needs it to get back on the lead lap. Waltrip pulls away. And Richmond goes to the inside.
3 abreast through there. Somebody has to give.
Richmond did. And look at Earnhardt. He was just waiting there, kind of like a vulture.
Waiting for something to happen. Now Dale dives inside of Tim Richmond as they come off of the corner. It is Waltrip still leading. Yarborough there in second position, but is a lap down. And look at Bill Elliott, who is right in the hunt now all of a sudden, right behind Dale Earnhardt. Look at the strength that Bill is showing here, along with Bobby Allison.
Now remember, Bill gained his lap back, so he is on the lead lap. So they've worked all afternoon, and they seem to have gotten the car dialed in much nicer than the way it started. Earnhardt goes to the inside of Tim Richmond. A good run there for the Richard Childress prepared Chevrolet. It moves him into second. Yarborough's going to try it one more time. No, nothing doing in turn 1.
Cale still trying to capture that lost lap. He looks inside. Waltrip is sideways. Is he going to spin? Oh, he saves it. Unbelievable.
But look who got his lap back. Cale Yarborough is back on the tail end of the lead lap. Now he has to hope for a caution. If he does, he moves back into the lead lap with the leaders.
Boy, that is as close you can come to spinning, especially here at Darlington, and gathering it in and saving it. Unbelievable job of driving by Darrell Waltrip off corner number 2.
Pretty good piece of driving by Cale Yarborough as well, as that's all unfolding to maintain the composure to go for what you need. But now Yarborough's going to have to contend. Let's watch. Yarborough makes the move downstairs. He may have sensed that Waltrip was out of control because he gave an awful lot of room and just slid by him.
Boy, at tail end of that car, the right side came very close to touching the wall, and if he had, he would have undoubtedly gone out of control.
Now, this looks like a caged wrestling match we're going to have here between Yarborough and Dale Earnhardt. This will be WrestleMania 4 before this thing's done, because Earnhardt wants to keep Yarborough a lap down. He remembers in the Southern 500 a year ago when Yarborough started so far back, battled after being a lap down, battled back to challenge for the victory.
You just got to admit that Earnhardt looks as strong right now as he did in the early stages of the race. He moves side by side with Cale Yarborough out of the 4th corner. They come down the straightaway, and Cale is a lap down once again.
Yeah, because that was Earnhardt's line, the old rule. He had the windshield post up. Cale had to let him get by. I questioned if he was going to, but he had to.
6 cars on the lead lap. Joe Ruttman, who was involved in that spin over in the backstretch with Morgan Shepherd, is 6th. Let's get more on that from Dick Berggren.
Well, Joe Ruttman definitely got himself in trouble. This is part of the aerodynamic nose that the Buick teams tried to get on their cars that came off Joe Ruttman's automobile. They changed 2 tires on the car, beat on the sheet metal, and Kenny Bernstein was just in this pit area shaking his head saying, we can't seem to get a break. This doesn't happen in drag racing.
Joe Ruttman is unlucky, isn't he, Jack?
Oh, I'll tell you, Bob, he is so unlucky that if he bought a suit with 2 pairs of pants, he'd burn a hole in the jacket.
Alan Kulwicki scraping the wall out in turn number 2, but he keeps going, so no yellow. That is unlucky, you know.
I've had it happen to me.
There's Alan Kulwicki from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in contention this year for Rookie of the Year honors.
You know, something ought to be said about Alan Kulwicki, too. He's doing it the hard way. He's doing it by himself, and that is the only race car that the team owns. He owns 1 race car. He's brought it to every race he's competed in. The Quincy's people providing the sponsorship help, but Alan Kulwicki doing all the mechanical work as well as trying to learn all these Winston Cup tracks.
Meanwhile, up front, it's still Dale Earnhardt leading Cale Yarborough and Tim Richmond, a couple of lap cars down the straightaway.
And you know who looks better and better? Remember, he made that spirited run to the back, Richmond? Well, now he's starting to show a little more muscle, seems to be a little better in the car. So it's obvious that whatever was wrong with that car, they either fixed it or were able to repair it sufficiently to keep Richmond in the hunt and in a competitive hunt.
Next week on the short track at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, a 400 lap race that always provides a lot of excitement. There's Dale Earnhardt now going to the high side of Bobby Waywack in car number 74. Bobby Waywack another lap down.
Regular followers of auto racing in 1986, Winston Cup in particular, have seen this situation so many times. Dale Earnhardt at Daytona was right in the contending position, right to the end with Jeff Bodine. Then they went to Richmond, Virginia. They had the contention right there. And then went right on down the line. He's always been there, but he's yet to be victorious.
Neil Bonnet and Bobby Allison running together on the racetrack. They're contending third position here. Bobby Allison in third in car number 22 and Neil Bonnet in fourth in car number 12. It's been a nice performance by Neil Bonnet this afternoon, coming back from that very serious appearing accident last weekend at Bristol.
I think we've got Dick Bergeron can tell us a little bit more on the problems that have befallen Darrell Waltrip's car. Dick?
Well, I'm with Jeff Hammond. He's crew chief for Darrell Waltrip, Jack. Jeff, have you got things squared away? Is the problem underneath that car solved now?
Well, I believe we got it solved as far as, we're going to finish the race. I think it's going to be a problem right now. We really worked on it the last few caution flags, and the guys did a real super job, got everything cleaned up underneath, and I'm pretty well satisfied we're set to go the rest of the way.
How well can you run the rest of the race? Can you run strong enough to win?
Well, it's kind of hard to say right now. Dale's been awful impressive. Every time we pick up, he seems like he picks up. But we got a few little things left here at the end of the race. We got a couple good sets of tires left. And, we're getting ready to go racing here in about the next 75, 80 laps. So we're going to have to, kind of bear down then. I believe we may have a little bit left for it.
What was the problem with the car? There does seem to be a lot of oil on the back deck.
We had a rear end problem. The gasket was leaking right there around the third member. But we got underneath there and cleaned it off and resealed it on the outside with some epoxy type stuff. And we believe we got it solved. Put some more grease in the rear end. Let's have to see how we go the rest of the race.
Well, rear end gasket on Darrell Waltrip's has been fixed. He's ready to run.
All right, and Darrell is trying desperately to keep the position from Bobby Allison. We don't have a good battle for the lead at this point, but look at this. Second, third, fourth, and right behind Neil Bonnet is fifth place, Bill Elliott. And these guys are going at it tooth and nail out there.
It looks like Bobby Allison is caught in a Junior Johnson sandwich. Neil Bonnet, one of the Johnson team, number 12, goes to the inside, backs off, follows his fellow Hueytown Alabamian in through turns 1 and 2. Looks to the inside again around Bobby. These guys love to dice it up on the short tracks, but they go right by Bobby Allison, and now it's 11, 12, and 22.
And a good point to bring out here, when we talked to Bobby Allison yesterday and the day before about, and here comes Bobby Allison in, we talked about him running alongside his son Davey on the racetrack, and he admitted that, yeah, that's a problem, but it's almost as bad running with Neil Bonnet because he considers Neil such a good friend, almost a brother. Bobby comes in now, and they will go to work changing the rubber on the right side of the race car.
Well, now he was burning a lot of rubber in the corners. You can see him smoke the tires, especially in turns 1 and 2. The crew is changing those right side Goodyears. They dropped the jack. Let's see if they're going to do all 4. All right, they're changing all 4. Now that could be an indication that they have got a problem, a vibration somewhere, and they're not sure what it is, so they're going to have to change all 4 tires. And that's costly when you have to do it under green, but it's what you have to do when you think you've got a flat and you don't know where it is.
That's exactly the situation with Bobby Allison. He's back out on the racetrack, but it's a very costly stop for the Hueytown, Alabama driver. He goes a lap down on the field, and so 5 cars now remain on the lead lap. There is the leader of the contest, Dale Earnhardt, completing lap 261. 367 will make up the TranSouth 500. Jenkins, Jack Arute, and Dick Bergeron back at Darlington, South Carolina, and the TranSouth 500 that is being led by Dale Earnhardt. There is Richard Petty in car number 43 going to the inside of Bill Elliott. Now, we talked briefly about the neck brace that Richard Petty is wearing, and perhaps we can expand on that a little bit.
Well, actually, as I said to you before, it's kind of a Rube Goldberg contraption. Dick Bergeron actually discovered it down in the pits yesterday. What they've done is they've taken Richard's helmet and they've attached a ring to it, much like you would hook to your dog with a dog leash. They've run that wire down across a roll bar, then down across the side roll bars, and then up front, and attach it to a spring lever. So that actually they can dial in the tension and the amount of movement that Richard's head can make. But the only concern that I've got is with all those springs and all those wires and with the way it's connected to the top of his head, God, if Richard should ever have to exit the STP Pontiac quickly, he's going to have to remember to uncinch his seat belts, disconnect the radio wires, and not go running out there and be clotheslined by the wire that's still attached to his helmet.
Richard Petty running in 10th position here in the TranSouth 500 in the STP Pontiac car number 43.
I think there were a lot of people that after the Bristol telecast were very concerned because Richard coming out of the race car used to be so unusual. And then, of course, North Wilkesboro last year, he exited the car, and then again at Bristol. But we've got to remember, too, that he had a separated shoulder, a real tough one, at Daytona to begin the season. And it takes a long time to come back from that, and especially at a place like Bristol where you use for a head restraint, you tie a rope around your shoulder. So it could be a problem there. And look,
Joe Ruttman is about to go a lap down. There it is. Dale Earnhardt moving to the inside of Joe Ruttman at the end of the straightaway, and Joe Ruttman goes a lap down. So now only 4 cars remain on the lead lap. Now it is Tim Richmond and Joe Ruttman battling for position, and Tim goes into 5th, Joe back to 6th. Well, it's unfortunate that Tim had those early problems because since he got those problems corrected, he has been very consistent.
The only shot that Tim Richmond has got is we see Cale Yarborough pulling his Ford into the back pits. The only shot that Richmond's got is if he's got a situation. Well, look, it's terminal.
Yeah, it is, because his pits are on the back stretch and he comes in the front stretch pit, so it is all over for Cale Yarborough.
Let's see if we can catch him on the radio before he unhooks and see. We can find out what's wrong. Cale, this is ESPN. Can you tell us what happened?
Something went wrong in the engine, Jackie. I really don't know what happened.
Well, there you had it. It's a short afternoon for Cale Yarborough.
Yeah.
One that lately he's beginning to get discouraged about.
Certainly longer than Jeff Bodine's race today, though. The pole sitter who broke the track record in qualifying earlier this week lasted only a couple of laps as that car failed on him when the green flag dropped, and Jeff Bodine was the first out of the race. Others who have dropped out of contention include Harry Gant and Ricky Rudd, who were battling for second position on the track when they crashed out in corner number 1. Both of them okay. Terry Labonte is gone, and Dave Marcus also has dropped out of competition, Ron Bouchard, and so on. But Dale Earnhardt is continuing to set the pace and to look like a winner.
Let me go back to Tim Richmond and put a period on what I was saying before the 28 car dropped out. Actually, what he's got to look for is a caution. Got to look for a caution to get to the inside row and then hopefully get in front of Earnhardt and hope for an additional caution. That would gain him the laps and put him back on the lead lap before he could go racing.
Bill Elliott is still on the lead lap in 4th. He was a lap down earlier, but has made it up. Let's go down to Dick Berggren, who's with Dan Elliott.
Well, Dan, you fellas qualified 21st, but you're running 4th. Where did the speed come from?
Well, we've been having trouble with tire stagger and the way the car is getting around. If we can get the combination together, should be able to pick up okay, because we got some stops that run real good and some stops we don't run so good, and we're trying to figure this thing out.
What's your chances that you can get this car going fast enough to compete with Dale Earnhardt?
I don't know if anybody can compete with Earnhardt, but we're sure going to give it a try.
That's Dan Elliott, Bill Elliott's brother.
All right, Elliott remains on the lead lap, but last week's winner, who is Rusty Wallace, is 2 laps down. He just made a pit stop, is in 9th position, 2 laps to the rears. Now, Dale Earnhardt remains ahead of Tim Richmond on the racetrack, and you can see the tire smoke once again coming from both those cars.
And Richmond is stalking Earnhardt, waiting for the opportunity to maybe gain that lap back that he needs before he can go racing.
We have less than 100 laps to go in the TranSouth 500. Bobby Waywack in car number 74 once again is being lapped by the leaders. And so the field being spread out just a little bit now with only 4 cars on the lead lap, but anything can happen. Lots of things have happened so far. We'll be right back in just a moment. We We are high above the main straightaway here at Darlington, South Carolina, our vantage point from the broadcast booth, and we welcome you back to the TranSouth 500, where 278 laps have been completed, and the lead continues to be held by Dale Earnhardt. Jack Arute with me here in the broadcast booth, and Dick Berggren is working the pit area for us today. The situation remains the same with Earnhardt leading. There is Bill Elliott, who is running in 4th place, still on the lead lap. Ahead of him is the number 27 Al Ugard Pontiac, driven by Rusty Wallace, now being shown in 8th position, 2 laps down.
Still plenty of race time left, and you heard Dan Elliott talking about how they've been chasing the handles all afternoon on the Coors car for his brother Bill. They get that dialed in. We have a couple of more cautions, and there's no telling what we're going to have for a finish here. Rusty Wallace right in front of him. There's Tim Richmond. Look at Richmond just trying to get around a slower automobile. That was Trevor Boys he was trying to get by, and still keep Dale Earnhardt in his sights. You know, he's waiting for that yellow. It's obvious that what Richmond's doing is just playing a cat and mouse waiting game.
Earnhardt Richmond way out of the groove here on the main straightaway. Got all 4 tires down in the gray area, the apron of the racetrack, but managed to get back up into the groove by the time he arrived in corner number 1. And look at him ride that car. He was broad sliding there in corner number 4, trying desperately to stay up there with Dale Earnhardt.
There are many people that say that Tim Richmond has got an unusual sense, an unusual feel for a race car. This is one of the few racetracks that you'll ever hear a driver say he likes. The one race driver that I ever heard say, I really like Darlington, is Tim Richmond. He enjoys it. He says you really can feel what the car's doing by the seat of your britches. You can work with the race car. And it's more driver than it is race car to get around here. So he's just showing it here today, even though he's a lap down, staying up with Dale Earnhardt.
Let's go to Dick Berggren for some comments on that situation, Dick.
Well, Jack, Richmond yesterday was talking about racetracks in general that he likes, and he says that when he used to run a sprint car, his favorite racetrack was Terre Haute. That is the toughest of the sprint car tracks.
Wow. He does have a tendency to choose the toughest ones as being his favorite. His best finish here at Darlington, by the way, was a 2nd place finish in the Southern 500 back in 1984. Besides Bill Elliott, who is running 4th, and Neil Bonnet, who is 3rd. Also on the lead lap in 2nd position is Darrell Waltrip in number 11. Darrell Waltrip, the points leader going into this race. He wants another Winston Cup championship, but he believes that consistency will bring it to him rather than winning.
Has your success with Junior Johnson caused you to give up on the idea of starting and running your own team?
Well, we're at a point in our relationship where we have to decide. We have to weigh each other's good points and bad points. This is the end of our contract year, and we're starting to talk a little bit. I don't know what's going to happen. We've had a lot of success, and I enjoy driving this car more than anything I've ever done. And it may be that I'll continue to do that, but then there's also the possibility that I may not. And if I don't, then I have to decide what I want to do. Do I want to go out on my own, or do I want to drive for somebody else? And I haven't made that decision yet.
So he is still very much up in the air as to what 1987 will bring him.
Well, Bob, don't forget, this is the end of the 3-year cycle for the sponsorship from Anheuser-Busch and Kentucky Fried Chicken. So those things have to be considered. Darrell Waltrip has been one never to like a 2-car operation. But there's been a lot of talk between Darrell and Junior as well as to, hey, Darrell, look, what's the story? What's the situation? What do you need to do? I thought Darrell answered it very nicely in saying that there's still a lot of time before we have to make those sort of decisions. I can tell you one thing, knowing as well as I do the 2 gentlemen, Darrell Waltrip and Junior Johnson, they would like to continue their association not only in 1987, but 88, 89, right down to the time that Darrell Waltrip retires and possibly goes into racing himself as a Junior Johnson too.
Well, there was a lot of talk, though, when those 2 hooked up about how their personalities would clash and they would just not get along, but you cannot argue with success. They're both very successful in what they do.
We watched Joe Ruttman bring his car in for a continued service from the King Racing stable. It's obvious, Bob, that one of the things is people didn't realize that underneath both exteriors, Darrell Waltrip and Junior Johnson are exactly alike. They're sensitive people, they care about things, and they just show it a little bit differently. Their shells are different, but their hearts are almost exactly the same.
and they both are winners. There's no question about that. So while work goes on in the Joe Ruttman pit, we'll take another break and be back with more live action from Darlington, South Carolina. Back at the TranSouth 500 in Darlington, South Carolina, where Dale Earnhardt continues to dominate this race. He's led all but about 20 or 25 laps. And although, as you can see, the car is perhaps not handling the way Dale wants it to, and the rear end out a little bit on that particular second and third, for the first and second corner excursion. Nevertheless, Earnhardt able to maintain a rather healthy lead here on Darrell Waltrip.
And he's done it very consistently as well. It almost looks effortlessly as you watch him tour the racetrack. You take a look at the way Tim Richmond is running, and it's incredible. Richmond makes it look like it's Syracuse, New York, in a 1 mile dirt facility when he slides that car out of turn 3 and 4 and gets ready for the run down to the start-finish line. But Dale Earnhardt is just running like he's on rails, like it's just a normal every Sunday afternoon effort for him.
Right ahead of Dale Earnhardt, within a few car lengths, is Bobby Allison in car number 22. There is Bobby on the left side of your screen, and Bobby right now is only 1 lap down in 6th position, but will soon go 2 laps down.
So much can go away so quick, though. There's still a lot of racing left to go. A caution flag will just absolutely mash things up. Well, there's a couple of the rookies running in the Fords. Alan Kowicki, former ASA standout, ran 5 races last year on the Winston Cup Tour, then decided to move south. He moved down to North Carolina. Mark Stahl, who also lives in North Carolina but calls San Diego, California his home, another rookie. Now, these guys couldn't qualify the first day. They had to qualify on the second day. That's the rule at Darlington, because the first day you go through rookie orientation and a rookie test. You're judged by your peers. These guys had to be passed by the Winston Cup regulars before they were allowed to even qualify.
And Alan Kulwicki, who we just saw a few moments ago, has a degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee, and was 3rd in the ASA final point standings in 82 and 85.
They call him Super K.
Hard luck is about the only way you can describe this guy, Joe Ruttman. He's with Dick Berkman.
Well, Joe, the day is over. What has happened to your race car?
Well, Dick, when I got involved in the 47 car over on turn 2, it apparently ruptured the radiator core. It was losing water, and we was trying to nurse it through the race. We knew that we were in trouble, but we just tried to think we was going to run the best we could and get a good finish. But I think it's optimistic. I'm real optimistic how well this, Quaker State car is running, and I think that later on in the year, I'm really looking forward to more races.
You've had so many things happen to you where you've been the innocent victim. Are you beginning to feel snake bitten this year?
Well, I don't believe in that sort of thing. I look at this car as being green, and I enjoy money, and Quaker State's #1, and that's where I want to put the car.
I've never heard Joe Ruttman make any sort of statement that indicates that he gets down on himself or down on the crew. He's very optimistic always, and I personally think that this is his year. Sometime before the end of the season is over, Joe Ruttman is going to win a Winston Cup race. Another rookie still out there is Rick Wilson from Bartow, Florida, the Captain Cody's Oldsmobile. Rick got some experience on this track yesterday by finishing 4th in the Grand National race. He's currently 13th here in Winston Cup competition.
Now, Rick has taken over Joe Ruttman's old ride. That's the car that Joe Ruttman drove last year for Morgan McClure out of Abington, Virginia. They're still looking for sponsorship. Captain Cody is out of Daytona Beach, Florida, providing some help, and he's one of the rookies that's still in competition.
And Dale Earnhardt continues to set the pace with 298 laps. We got 69 more to go in the TranSouth 500. We'll be right back with more action. The leader, Dale Earnhardt, is right on the back bumper of Bill Elliott in car number 9 and threatening to put Bill a lap down once again. If he does, we will have 3 cars on the lead lap because Elliott is currently running in 4th. We watch him go into turn number 1. Elliott has not been as far as the lead is concerned, competitive, although the Ford hasn't run all that badly this afternoon.
Well, we heard Dick Bergeron talk to Dan Elliott and said that they had adjusted and adjusted on it, but it looks like they've not adjusted sufficiently to keep Earnhardt from putting him a lap down. He did that just like they were standing still.
And now 3 cars on the lead lap. Those 3, the 2 besides Earnhardt, the Junior Johnson cars, Darrell Waltrip second and Neil Bonnet running in third.
As you watch the car touring the racetrack, though, you've got to begin to question, you know, you're rubbing off those right rear tires. By the way that chassis is set up, you're showing all of that tire smoke. That's going to eventually catch up with you unless you get courtesy of enough caution flags to be able to change those tires before they finally go down to the fabric. It's not to say that he's not running fast, it's just to say that he's really using a lot of race car, at least in my mind's eye right now, especially in turns 1 and 2.
Bill Elliott has not led a lap today, but Ricky Rudd has, so a Ford does get credit for leading 1 lap under caution, but that's been the only Ford to move to the front today. There's Bobby Allison, car number 22. He currently is in 6th spot, now 2 laps down to the leader.
There's Earnhardt. See how he rounds out, comes out of the corner, comes across the stripe, and he's got his sights set on Neil Bonnet, who's running in third. He'd like to put Neil a lap down. They're only about a quarter of a straightaway apart, so it wouldn't be that much longer before Earnhardt can measure up and take a shot at Neil Bonnet.
Neil Bonnet, the only one that can extend the streak to 12 different winners, because both Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip have won in the last 11 races. So Bonnet is right now the only one that may extend that streak. There he is, Neil Bonnet, last week hard into the wall at Bristol. This week in 3rd place, but not too far behind him is the leader, Dale Earnhardt. Darrell Waltrip running in 2nd position, and another Waltrip is out there on the racetrack, still in the race, and that is Mike Waltrip, car number 23. Mike, another one of those in contention for Rookie of the Year honors.
But he's not considered a rookie at this racetrack because he did compete in the Southern 500, Bob. But he is driving Dick Bear's car, sponsored by Hawaiian Punch, and he's genuinely excited about getting out here and getting the track time that he needs to be able to learn about these racing facilities. You know, he's got that Pontiac, and really he has kept his nose clean here. And you know, the one thing that really we notice everywhere they go, Darrell does take the time to go over and talk to Mike. And he says one of the differences between when I came up and when Mike came up is the fact that I've gotten into Mikey's car periodically this year and told him what's wrong with it. Well, here's Tim Richmond. We talked so much about him, but he's back in the pits.
By the way, this is Mike Waltrip's best performance ever in a Winston Cup race. His best career finish has been an 18th. This year, he had a 19th place finish in Atlanta. He is currently 12th and not doing all that bad at all. The rubber being changed on the right side of Tim Richmond's Folgers car. And let's see if he chooses to. No, they will not change rubber on the left side of the car, so it's just a right side rubber and a fuel fill-up.
Did you see the smoke coming out of the right front there, Bob? That's the smoke from the brake calipers. That's how much they're using the brakes here.
And there is Neil Bonnet going a lap down to the field. So Dale Earnhardt is threatening to lap the entire field here at Darlington. Only one more car now on the lead lap with Dale Earnhardt, and that is Darrell Waltrip. And it would not surprise me at all if Waltrip went a lap down in this race and Dale laps the entire field. It has been that kind of a day for Earnhardt. Bobby Allison, though, going back around Earnhardt on the inside of the racetrack there in corner number 1. And here is Bill Elliott coming in for a stop. 4th place, Bill Elliott brings the Ford in. We have 309 laps completed out of 367, so if this is just a routine stop, it will be the final one, and Earnhardt is also coming in for his final pit stop of the afternoon. Here he is, entering the pits, the crew waiting for him to stop so they can go to work, and let's go to Dick Bergeron.
Dale Earnhardt slides to a stop here. They've got 2 brand new sticker tires for the outside of this car. That's a surprise. Generally in the last pit stop, they'll put on a set of tires that have been used so they know how they're going to grow. But these guys have chosen brand new tires. They're still putting the fuel in the car. And this time Earnhardt gets the full load and off he goes.
18.2 second pit stop for Dale Earnhardt, and away he goes back onto the racetrack. So Earnhardt will resume now his lead in the TranSouth 500. We'll be right back in just a moment. We welcome you back to Darlington, South Carolina, and the TranSouth 500 being brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? And by Dickies, they're America's favorite work clothes, but who says you have to work in them? And by Armor All, it's the finishing touch every time you wash your car. 313 laps completed in the TranSouth 500. The lead held by Dale Earnhardt. Second place is the number 11 car driven by Darrell Waltrip. Kyle Petty comes in for a pit stop.
Dick Berger alluded to the fact that they went with sticker tires, brand new tires on Dale Earnhardt, your leader. Could be that they had to go that way because they just don't have any sets of used tires that aren't wore out or that are too wore out, so they can't put any of them back on with the way he's been burning tires.
Well, Darrell Waltrip is the leader of the race at the moment because he has not made his final pit stop, although this man, Dale Earnhardt, will assume the lead once again when Waltrip does come in for his pit stop. There is Darrell coming down the main straightaway, but he is choosing to stay out for at least one more circuit of this 1.336 mile racetrack. As you can see, Ayrton Senna was the winner of the Spanish Grand Prix that ESPN had for you this morning at 10 o'clock with Jackie Stewart and with Larry Newber. American League Baseball scores: New York leading Milwaukee. Cleveland has the lead over Detroit in the 7th inning. Seattle leading Minnesota in the 8th. And the rest of the baseball scores for you. Of course, hockey tonight on ESPN as we continue to bring you the Stanley Cup playoffs. Waltrip running in second position. We should be seeing a pit stop by Darrell possibly this time around. He's at the end of the backstretch. If he drops the car low on the track, it will be an indication he's coming in for a stop, and he is.
He does, you see, tries to get out of the throttle, come around the corner as slowly as he possibly can. That's about 55 to 60 miles an hour. Then he can do the shoot and scoot down to the end of pit road where the Junior Johnson team will be ready to service him for the final time, they hope.
Waltrip sliding to a stop in the Junior Johnson pit. The crew going to work on that machine.
Right side tires, that's all they intend to change right now. They're filling it up with fuel. Here's Dale Earnhardt circuiting the racetrack. Waltrip goes away and he's on the backstretch.
He's just entering turn number 3 as Darrell moves out into turn number 1. And the number 4 car of Rick Wilson low on the racetrack just ahead of Darrell Waltrip. So Waltrip begins to gain some momentum now, and it's going to be almost a half-lap lead for Dale Earnhardt.
Everything has gone Dale Earnhardt's way today. Pit stops have been just perfect. Everything that they have done, they've not had any major chassis problems. He has really come to the track too tough to tame with a whip and a chair that seems to be able to get the job done, Bob.
Flawless performance by Dale Earnhardt, and the question that he is asking himself probably, and that we are asking, can the car run the entire 500 miles? He has had a problem doing that in the races so far this year. Last week at Bristol, the car giving out on him with just 3 laps to go. And it could very well be a situation like that here this afternoon, although Earnhardt certainly deserves the win because of his flawless performance here this afternoon. An important point to make is that if Earnhardt were to win here, this 11-win streak would be stopped, but it would also start again because Dale started this streak back in Martinsville last year as Harry Gant visits the pits.
Look at how bad that car's been torn apart. He's taken jackhammers to it, pulled all the sheet metal away. It looks like a cross between a Grand American and a modified and a sprint car.
but it still runs. And of course, Harry is concerned with getting as many Winston Cup points as possible. Comes Earnhardt off the 4th corner once again, completing lap number 321. Still some tire smoke off that car, but it's not a serious situation, as it appears to be handling very well. There's J.D. McDuffie in car number 70, the Rumpel Furniture Pontiac. J.D., not a rookie to this type of racing by any stretch of the imagination, but not a regular at the same time.
He was recently featured as having the longest losing streak in NASCAR. But he's always here. He comes week in and week out. And, you know, people don't realize just how difficult it is for an independent. You don't get your tires for free. You don't get your bodies for free. Everything you pay cash for. And each one of those tires that he puts on goes about $160. So it gets expensive for JD to come week in and week out.
And it's very evident that JD has a lot of race fans out there, because he has made the Invitational that we'll be telling you about in just a few moments as we continue to cover the TranSouth 500. Laps completed out of 367 in the TranSouth 500. Dale Earnhardt is the leader. Darrell Waltrip is running in 2nd spot. Bobby Allison is 3rd, but Waltrip is the only other car on the lead lap. Running right ahead of Dale Earnhardt right now is Bobby Allison. There's a good close-up of Dale as he moves through turns number 3 and 4. Well, we mentioned the Invitational race that will be coming up during the month of May. It's a field selected by the fans. Here's Jackaroo.
NASCAR fans selected the 14-car starting field for the Atlanta Invitational, and there were some surprises. Bobby Allison, Arrington, Baker, Hillen, McDuffie, Means, Parsons, Richard Petty, Richmond, Ruttman, Speed, Trevor Boys, and Dave Marcus. But the biggest surprise was maybe the top vote getter, who got over 130,000 votes.
The man who received 132,000 votes and will start on the pole, the guy who started off leading the balloting and continued throughout the deal, driving his 711 Wood Brothers Ford, Kyle Petty.
Kyle Petty was flattered, to say the least, by the fans' response.
It's a real honor, you know, to have the fans vote for a deal like this, and to be able to get the most votes against people like my father and Benny Parsons and, you know, Bobby, the guys that have been around a long time. So, you know, I think it's a pretty big deal.
For independent drivers like Arrington Boys, Means, and J.D. McDuffie, simply making the field was an honor.
In your wildest dreams, did you ever envision that on May 11th you'd be turning a wheel at Atlanta in the Atlanta Invitational?
I felt like I'd made enough friends and fans over the years to where I would, and I really appreciate them coming out and voting for me.
The 100-lap, $300,000 Atlanta Invitational takes the green flag on Sunday, May 11th. Companion to the Winston, the $500,000 winner's race, and you'll see it all here on ESPN.
We're very excited about that racing doubleheader that day in Atlanta, the Winston, and then the Invitational should provide for an exciting day of racing here on ESPN. And there's Kyle Petty, the top vote getter in the Invitational. He is 9th here in the TranSouth 500.
And you know, the rest of those vote getters are going to have to go through time trials, so that was a big break for Kyle Petty. He and the Wood brothers will be able to set up for the race. Won't have to worry about going fast, just go for the 100 miles, and they'll have an extra day while the rest of them try to qualify for a position.
Only the pole position that is locked in.
Correct.
As you can see, Kyle is off the pace in this race, but nevertheless is in the top 10 at this moment. Earnhardt is the leader of the race. And Darrell Waltrip, the only other car on the lead lap, and Earnhardt's advantage over Darrell Waltrip is about 3/4 of a lap. So Dale is not in danger of losing the lead unless something goes wrong with the car. There's Bill Elliott, who is slowing on the racetrack, certainly off the pace. And it has not been a good weekend for Bill all around.
No, it hasn't. And there you can see one of the Elliott brothers running back to the truck to get what is ever needed. I'm sure they've radioed in and said, look, I need such and such a part. So he's been sent over there to get the part, and they'll be coming in, initiate the repairs on that car.
Bill trying to gain some experience on the road courses for the L&R Series that will be coming up. He has competed in several IMSA races this year and has been doing quite well, as a matter of fact, for the Jack Roush team.
You know, he won his first race, his first Winston Cup race on a road course in Riverside, California. He's been an accomplished road course racer ever since he's been in competition. Let's go down to Dick Berger, and he may have an update on the condition.
Well, Elliott's problem is under the hood. They're raising the hood at this moment. The engine is silent. And they've got a new rotor button sitting right there as if they're going to put that on. Dan Elliott has just come back from the truck. He's got a new distributor. He has a new distributor cap. They are removing the air cleaner of this automobile. So Bill Elliott with a still engine on pit road. Probable cause electrical malfunction.
Dick, that's about the second or third time today that we've seen this problem. Add to it the problems we saw on the Grand Nationals. There are an awful lot of electrical problems going down.
Well, the electrical thing, Jack, is definitely something that's plagued an awful lot of competitors here. These distributors are required by racing rules to be very, very close to the kinds of stock distributors that you find on the street. Well, on the street, you only run about 3,300 RPM at 55 miles an hour. Here, you turn as much as 8,000 RPM, and the heat is also a much bigger factor on the racetrack. So the additional RPM, the additional heat, really puts a lot of strain on the electrical system.
I remember at North Wilkesboro, where we were going next week, had the problem in that fall race there with Darrell Waltrip with distributor wires.
What a difference a year makes, though, as far as Bill Elliott is concerned. Last year at this time, Bill was dominating. Bobby Allison picking up the fourth position from Tim Richmond there. So Bobby passing Tim at the end of the straightaway and going fourth. Elliott at this time last year was on his way to an unbelievable season, and this year things have just not gone well. He is, however, back out on the racetrack.
Boy, and slowing dramatically is the Tim Richmond machine. He is really slowed down. Bill Elliott has gone back out, but Richmond most likely will be coming into the pit shortly because there's something wrong with that car.
The domination of the TranSouth 500 at Darlington continues for Dale Earnhardt. We'll be back with more after these messages. Dale Earnhardt is still the leader here at Bristol, here at Darlington. Bristol was last weekend. North Wilkesboro was next weekend.
A lot of people, though, think this is a short track, Bob, so they wouldn't fault you. It takes a lot of short track talents to get around Darlington because it's not the run-of-the-mill super speedway. The turns, the banking, as tight as it is, it gives it a physical abuse on the drivers, and you really have to keep your head about you all the time, just like you would on a place like Bristol.
The turns in 1 and 2 are banked at 22 degrees. In 3 and 4, the banking is 20 degrees. We've been racing now for a little less than 4 hours, and I would think that the fatigue would be tremendous. Here is Tim Richmond's car coming into the pits with a flat tire.
You can see how it's wobbling back and forth. Now, it's not totally flat down on the wheel. What it is they got an inner liner inside to retain some of it. But it is flat nonetheless.
Yep, I can see him.
They're changing the left side rubber on the Tim Richmond machine. Tim at the moment is running in the top 10. He is 5th, but he was at least until this pit stop, and now it may have cost him a couple of positions. Rusty Wallace also was in for a stop, and Rusty pulls out onto the track right behind Tim Richmond.
No matter where you look, everybody's had a problem. When you look down the list of the current leaders, Bonnet had his share of problems. Waltrip, we alluded to the problems there when we talked to Jeff Hammond. We take a look at everybody except one driver, Dale Earnhardt. He's leading. It's been just a quality afternoon for Richard Childress and their entire team. Nothing has gone wrong with the Earnhardt car. And when you watch Earnhardt drive that number 3, take it around the racetrack, watch how smooth that car is. He goes up around H.B. Bailey. He puts it up in the high side. Then he just ducks it down low, can bring it back around. Very little wobble, very little jump as compared to H.B. Bailey's car, which wanted to change lanes maybe twice or 3 times during that piece of real estate they covered. And he goes over here into turns 1 and 2, and again can run right up against the rail without any problem whatsoever. He may be burning the tires, but it's handling perfectly for Earnhardt today.
Earnhardt started this race from outside of row number 2, right alongside Benny Parsons. Dale was the 4th fastest qualifier at about, and Mike Waltrip is experiencing a problem. Mike going into the pits on the back stretch, and here on the front stretch, and there's a lot of smoke pouring from that car. And we had told you earlier that this was Mike's best performance in a Winston Cup race. They're, however, taking the hood off the car and looking in the engine compartment. A lot of smoke coming from underneath the hood.
That's got to be a big disappointment for young Mike Waltrip. You know, one of the things that most people don't know is that he spent some time living with Richard Petty before he went Winston Cup Grand National Racing. When he was driving for what they call the Baby Grand International Sedan Series, he lived with Richard. When Kyle moved out, Richard said, I got a Waltrip as a son now. And they really took him under his shoulder.
And we have a car in the wall in turn 3. Excuse me for interrupting, but Bobby Waywack has pounded the concrete in turn number 3, and some fire from the engine compartment of that race car. Waywack gets it to the inside on the apron and is trying to unstrap the belts and get out of there before the fire threatens him physically. And here he comes. Waywack is out of the car, appears to be okay, but this is going to bring out another caution flag.
It's a tough break for a guy like Bobby Waywack because he doesn't have that many cars. That's an old car that he brought here because they didn't have one of the new cars ready for competition in Darlington. And now he's trashed it, as you can see, the Superior Piping Special, number 74. And you know, if you look over there on the window side, behind the opera window, what Bobby carries on all of his cars is the saying, all things are possible.
Well, he was able to get out of that race car without any injury. It's still over there in the 3rd turn, and so far no help has come toward it. Now a tow truck does get into position. Here is Dale Earnhardt pitting.
And Earnhardt is sliding to his stop again. This time they're putting on 4 tires, and this time all 4 tires are scuffs. Tires that they have run already, and so they know exactly what the stagger is, how they're going to grow, how they're going to work. They've got those right side tires on. The fuel is already in. The crew now is working on the left side tires. Everything is going just perfectly. He's got a little mark on the left rear quarter panel. Other than that, Earnhardt's car even is unmarked. It has been his day, and there he goes from what should be his final pit stop.
It has been his day, and it would really be too bad if something were to happen in the final laps of this race, as he has experienced earlier this year, because he has worked for and earned this TranSouth 500 win.
But it's not over yet. You know, he had worked for and earned a win in the Daytona 500, and when it was over, it went to Jeff Bodine. He'd worked for and earned a victory, let us say, at Bristol, Tennessee. But when it was over, it was the Alugard team with Rusty Wallace in victory lane. You know, it doesn't have anything to do with it, how much you work and how much you earn. What it has to do with is who comes beneath the checkered flag.
Here comes the Bud cars, the Junior Johnson machines, and Neil Bonnet peels off into his pit area while Darrell Waltrip continues on down the pit road and now comes to a stop while the crew begins to change the tires on the right side. The air wrenches at work. Will they change on the left side of the car? Yes, they will. And also a member of the pit crew goes inside the car on the right and makes some chassis adjustments there.
And that is very difficult this year.
And there goes Waltrip. Now the question is, can he catch Dale Earnhardt? It could be that the tire setup is right for Darrell now and he can make a race out of this. We'll be right back in just a moment to find out. We are in our 10th caution period of the afternoon in the TranSouth 500 from Darlington International Raceway in South Carolina. The most recent incident involved Bobby Waywack. He hit the wall up in turn number 3, but is okay. They're still cleaning up the track over there. The car is off of the racetrack, and so we should be going green within too many laps. Now, Dale Earnhardt continues to lead this race, but Darrell Waltrip is running in 2nd position, and earlier this weekend we talked to Darrell.
You're leading the points, and I believe you were quoted not too long ago as saying that you now believe that it's consistency that you want to go for rather than the wins. Is that a fair quote?
Well, we want to finish all the races. If you do that, then you'll win the championship, or you'll at least you'll have a good chance to win the championship. The Winston Cup Championship in 1986 is worth $550,000. That's a lot of money, and $550,000 in November is a whole lot better than $30,000 or $40,000 through the season. So we look forward to the championship, and the money is great. And one thing I like to say, there should never be, in the course of a season, any event, any race, or anything that's more important than being the champion. That should be the #1 priority. That should be where the emphasis is. That's where the money should be. And I think it's changing now. This year it's better, 550 for the winner. It might be $1 million next year, but that's the way it should be.
And consistency has been the word for Darrell Waltrip this year. He was 3rd in Daytona, 5th at Richmond, 5th at Rockingham, 4th at Atlanta, 3rd at Bristol, and is running 2nd here this afternoon. And we would like to update you on Bobby Waywack. The official word is that he is okay after that incident up there in turn number 3. The track is clear. The green flag is out again with 356 laps completed. We have 11 laps to go in this one.
Well, if the start's any indication, Darrell Waltrip has picked up considerably in the speed department because he's holding on to Dale Earnhardt.
That is the thing that we will be looking for. Remember, these two guys went at it at the finish of the Richmond race and in a controversial situation with just a few laps to go, and both cars went crashing into the wall. 10 laps to go right now, and I'm not sure that Darrell is going to be able to stay up with it.
He's losing ground quickly. Earnhardt is making good use of those used tires that they put on by Richard Childress. He's beginning to pull away. But don't forget, Darrell has been known to just wait and wait, even though it's 10 laps to go.
You know, one of the guys that has done a very steady job this afternoon is Richard Petty. Petty is 2 laps down, but he is running in 5th position. There is Richard to the inside of the racetrack in the STP Pontiac. And this has to be a real feather in Richard's cap because he has endured the fatigue and the strain on the body here this afternoon and has run well all day.
And he's running right up there with the leaders. He's sandwiched between 2nd and 3rd. Waltrip is 2nd. There's Petty a lap down. And then 3rd is Waltrip's teammate, Neil Bonnet. But he's keeping up with them. But nobody's keeping up with Dale Earnhardt.
Now diving to the inside of the racetrack alongside Richard Petty is Neil Bonnet. And Bonnet passes Richard. Now Tim Richmond also comes along to the inside of the racetrack, passing Richard Petty.
Now, as I've said, Bob, drafting is marginal here, but you've got Bonnet and Waltrip with clear sailing in front of them. Maybe they can use the draft just a little bit as Petty gets out of the way and Bobby Allison gets by. Maybe they can use to try and gobble up some of that real estate. Let's see if Neil Bonnet elects to stay right behind his teammate, Darrell Waltrip.
Now, despite the fact that Richard is being passed here, he is not losing positions. He is running all by himself, 2 laps down. The number 27 car of Rusty Wallace and the number 25 car of Tim Richmond are 6th and 7th, and they are 3 laps down. So Richard is still 5th. Waltrip and Bonnet running 2nd and 3rd, but they are also separated by 1 lap as Neil lost a lap quite a while ago and has not been able to make it up. Nevertheless, it is a very good run for Neil Bonnet. Ballesteros leading the Masters, and Ayrton Senna earlier today winning, and Petty is in the wall in the backstretch. Oh, just when we were complimenting him on such a great drive, something happens and Petty hits the wall in the backstretch.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So close to the end.
5 laps from the end and this crash occurred.
He's still in the car. He's fired the motor. He's trying to put it into gear. He's actually looking for a place to put it right now. It's midway down the backstretch. Throws it into reverse. Everybody spins by him. What an ignominious way to end a day.
Yeah,
let's take a look at it.
Unfortunate. Here's the replay.
Well, it's at the tail end. He's already begun his pirouettes. 1, 2, going Going for the third.
Took a pretty good ride, but
Yeah.
didn't really hit the wall very hard, it appears. Here he comes into the pit area. And with 4 laps to go now, we could conceivably end this race under caution.
Oh, and I would hate to see that, because right now, if they would go back to maybe 1 or 2 green flag laps, we could see a sprint car type finish.
Petty's crew is working on the right side of the car. They really didn't do much to it. They hardly even touched it. In fact, didn't even change tires and just sent him out with a disgusted look on all of their faces. They're obviously terribly disappointed.
I'm certain that they are. Now Richard goes 3 laps down and is on the same lap as Rusty Wallace and Tim Richmond. Now, Richard is now down to 7th position and on the same lap as Tim and Rusty. Well, they'll come around now, and there will be, what, 2 laps to go, I believe. This will complete lap 364, so there'll be 3 more laps to go. And the real question is, will they end under caution?
And you can be sure that Junior Johnson's crew is looking at the starter, as is Richard Childress's crew. I'm sure Childress's crew would like to see it end under the yellow. The same not for Johnson. They'd like to see the 1 to go signal this time by,
Yes,
and that's what they get.
Yes, sir. There will be 1 more lap until green, and so there will be 2 laps of green, and you can bet that Darrell Waltrip is going to let it all hang out.
Remember Richmond, Virginia?
Yes.
1st and 2nd, the names were Waltrip and Earnhardt. Grandma, put your teeth in the pocketbook, because these last 2 laps, they're going to be wild ones.
It's going to be Earnhardt and Waltrip once again. And lurking in the shadows, Waltrip's teammate, Neil Bonnet, who is running 3rd. And also on the same lap as Neil Bonnet in 4th position is Bobby Allison, so we'll watch that.
And see, there's the tough question. Is Neil Bonnet, when he's down on the inside, does he just stay out of the throttle and let Earnhardt and his teammate go race for the win? He can't do too much of it, because he's got to worry about Bobby Allison appropriating his position.
Look at Dale making it a slow start. Now he begins to stand on the gas and pull away. Here we go. The green is going to come out on lap 365. 2 laps to go. It's a sprint race, Earnhardt and Waltrip.
Bonnet's trying to hold him off downstairs. See how everybody went to the high side to try and get around. Into 1, it's Earnhardt trying to chase him down as Waltrip, but Earnhardt's still got an awful lot of muscle, Bob.
Bonnet leading Allison for 3rd place. Now Bobby goes inside of Neil on the backstretch. Can he pull off the pass at the end of the backstretch? Yes, Allison takes over 3rd spot.
Oh no, the restart move could have cost Bonnet 3rd position.
Here they come for the white flag. 1 more lap to go. Dale Earnhardt is on the lead. And I don't believe that Darrell is going to catch him. Will the car hold under Dale Earnhardt? We continue to watch the battle for 3rd also behind Dale. It is still Bobby Allison in 3rd. And I don't believe that Neil is going to be able to catch Bobby. They come off of corner number 4. There is the 3rd place, Bobby Allison. Dale Earnhardt is on the main straightaway and accepts the checkered flag and wins the TranSouth 500. Waltrip finishes 2nd, Bobby Allison 3rd, and Neil Bonnet winds up 4th. Well, finally, this long race has come to an end, and a well-deserved victory by Dale Earnhardt.
You think it was a long race for you. What about Dale Earnhardt? All the races that he's been in, and there they are congratulating each other. Waltrip and Earnhardt waving to the fans. But it's been a long time for Dale Earnhardt. Earnhardt, his last victory came September 22nd, 1985. He's the guy that started the 11 faces, 11 races.
So we still have an 11 race streak intact, but we start all over now because Darrell, as you said, started a streak back in September of 1985 with the win at Martinsville. Dale Earnhardt led 332 of the 367 laps, just some indication of how dominant he was here this afternoon at Darlington.
And you knew finally, with as well prepared as that car has been each and every time it's been presented to a speedway, that a victory was forthcoming at any moment. He did it today, and he did it in fine fashion, and at a place that you really have got to have your act together to even hope to be victorious. He not only had his act together, he had written the book.
And aside from just a little bit of paint scraped off the body on the left side of the car, that car is completely unflawed, so to speak. A nice performance here by Dale Earnhardt this afternoon. We'll be back in a moment to talk with him in Victory Lane. The TranSouth 500 at Darlington is over, and the winner is Dale Earnhardt. Let's go to Victory Lane and Dick Berggren.
Well, Dale, congratulations, tired Dale Earnhardt. A new definition of dominating Darlington. You seem to really have it hooked up today.
Well, we worked awful good here last year, and we came right down to the end in Austin. You know, we work awful hard, Richard Childers and all the crew. I'd like to thank Goodwrench and Wrangler and all the people that work real hard to put the money behind us to race, and you know, thank the good Lord and all the crew. They did a super job. You know, Old Darlington's a tough place to beat, and we beat her today. We outrun everybody, but we beat this racetrack today.
It seemed as if you had no problems at all. Were there any problems during the day?
Just a few close calls with slow cars, but other than that, everything went fine.
How about your thoughts on that yellow flag changing to a green flag with only 2 to go? Did that worry you? Did you know you had everybody else covered at that point?
Well, I've been so close at the end of so many races this year that 3 laps is all it took for the win or run second. And, you know, I told them on the radio, I said, well, here's that last 3 laps to spoofing us again. But we was a little stronger than Darrell, and I just kept her straight and come on home.
A second yesterday in the Grand National race, a first today in the Winston Cup race. You must be looking at one of your finest seasons ever.
Well, we are. You know, it's been a real good year for us all the way around in both divisions, and Richard and all the crew do a super job. The kids back home, you know, they support me, and my wife, Teresa, we all just having a good time this year.
And the drivers having a good time, too. Back to you, Bob.
All right, and our Winner's Circle interview has been brought to you by Goodyear Eagles. You either have Goodyear Eagles or you need them. Well, Jack and Dick and I will be back here at Darlington, South Carolina to kind of wrap things up for you on this Sunday afternoon. The TranSouth 500 won by Dale Earnhardt. The top 10 finishers here this afternoon. The winner, Dale Earnhardt. Darrell Waltrip finished second. Bobby Allison third, followed closely by Neil Bonnet. Fifth was Tim Richmond. Finishing in 6th position was last week's winner, Rusty Wallace. 7th was Richard Petty, who spun and hit the wall late in the race. 8th was Bill Elliott. 9th was Kyle Petty, and 10th was Ken Schrader. So it was an interesting weekend for Darrell Waltrip and Dale Earnhardt. Waltrip won the Grand National race yesterday, and Earnhardt finished second, and they traded positions here in the Winston Cup race today. Jack?
I tell you, I was most impressed by the comments by Earnhardt in Victory Lane when he said we raced the track and we beat it. Indeed, they did. He really went after the racetrack. He raced it all day, forgot about the other competitors, and said, that's going to be the way I'm going to win this thing. And he deserves to be in Victory Lane.
Dick Berggren has caught up with Darrell Waltrip in the pit area, so let's go to that interview. Dick, you got him?
No, thanks. Well, Darrell, a good job, not quite a victory.
Well, we had a few little minor problems here and there, but overall, I'm tickled to death to run second. Jeff and everybody in the pit crew did a good job getting us out early there a couple of times, and nobody was going to beat Dale today. He deserved to win that race. Those last couple of cautions, I know, had to make him nervous, but he had us covered, and it's been a deal where Bodine had the best car at Daytona, and somebody else had the best car at Rockingham, and somebody else had the best car at Atlanta, and so on and so forth in the same way today. One car a little bit better than everybody else, and he gets the victory.
Were you really afraid your car was on fire midway during the race, Darrell?
Yeah, what had happened was we had a rear end leaking, seal out of the rear end, and it was leaking a little grease. Then all of a sudden one of my tailpipes started dragging a little bit and sparking, and I thought the thing had caught on fire, and it panicked me pretty bad, but it didn't. I want to thank the Lord for a safe race, and say hi to Letitia and Frank and everybody at home.
It's Darrell Waltrip, second place here at Darlington this afternoon.
All right, congratulations to Darrell finishing second here. The average speed of the race was 128.994. There were 16 lead changes among 8 drivers. The TranSouth 500 has been brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? And by Busch Beer, the beer with a taste as smooth as its name. And by Levi Garrett Chewing Tobacco. Time after time, the quality comes through. Join us for Speed Week later this week with a wrap-up on all the auto racing activity from throughout the nation. And join us next Sunday afternoon for the 400-lap race from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. Thanks to Dick Berggren and Jack Arute. This is Bob Jenkins. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next Sunday. For now, from Darlington, South Carolina, So long, everyone.